evening, everyone. I will call this Tuesday, February 16th meeting of the Quincy City Council to order. Mr. Clerk, if you could read the roll.
Council Kane. Present. Council Crowe. Present. Council Devon. Present. Council Finn. Present. Council Forrest.
Present.
Council Liang.
Present.
Council Talucci.
Present.
President Hughes.
Present. Could I ask you to stand and join me in a moment of silence, remembering all those suffering here in Quincy and throughout the country. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, if you'll read the open meeting law.
Thank you, Madam President. This is Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20E. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. All right. First item, Mr. Clerk.
First item, Madam President, is Council Law 2016046. Resolved, presentation by Quincy Police Chief Paul Keenan regarding oversight and management of Quincy Police Department detail operations.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Chief, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. I guess my purpose tonight here is twofold. One is to bring you up to date on some issues that we had going on in the Quincy Police Department surrounding the details, the assignment of details, and the payment of details. And at the end of that, I'm going to be asking for an appropriation, and I'll get the appropriation and explain why I need an appropriation. As you're aware, there is an investigation going on into the practice of the details in one of our offices. And also, it's a personnel matter with one of our offices. So I'll take as many questions as you want to throw at me, and I'll try and handle every one of those questions. I'll try and answer them as completely as I can with those two things in mind. By way of introduction, around September 24th, it was brought to my attention internally, and that's a key point. It was an internal investigation. It was brought to my attention that there may be some inappropriate use of details and hours of details and overlapping of details. At that point, I asked my Internal Affairs Division to look into it. They immediately looked into it. They determined pretty quickly on that there were some improprieties with the details with one officer in particular. That officer, once we determined that there was some impropriety, that officer was placed on administrative leave. We continued the investigation. The investigation was somewhat cumbersome because of the system that we have. We looked into it. We determined that there was some inappropriate activity in the details. That officer was put on administrative leave. At that point, the investigation, when it was concluded, I made a recommendation to Mayor Cope. Mayor Cope followed the recommendation. That officer was suspended. He was removed from the detail list for over a year. He was reassigned from his assignment. He signed a last chance agreement, and he was given a 6-month suspension from the job. So I made that recommendation. The mayor adopted that recommendation, and the mayor suspended the officer. The officer is presently out on unpaid leave, unpaid suspension. We continued on with our investigation, and we're looking to fix a system that's an antiquated system. Part of what the detail system is, we have a payroll system. We don't have a system in place that detects abuse. The system's been in place for at least the 32 years that I've been there. It's a payroll system that works pretty well at getting the invoices in, getting the offices paid, getting the details collected, getting the details billed. But it doesn't necessarily detect abuse, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today. Look, going forward, we're going to tighten up some of the practices in the detail office. We're also looking at some software, computerized software, that will essentially vet out this type of activity. What it does is it looks at all the office's hours of work, it compares the hours of work, and it would not allow any slip that's put in for payment that overlaps at any hour, and will immediately red flag it. So I think this is a good step going forward. I don't know if it's a perfect system, but we did meet with 3 vendors. We believe that this is the best system out of the 3 because it looks at our payroll records, our overtime records, our court, our details, and anything else, any hours of work, days due or time due. And it compares all of those, and it gives us a pretty good of an indication, and will spit out any kind of a request for payment or time that overlaps. So that's kind of where we're at this point in time. The detail system's kind of cumbersome. We do bill out, in 2015 fiscal year, we billed out over $3 million. Part of that is we have a 10% billing fee, so we recovered about $350,000 thereabouts. These are round numbers. About $350,000 back into the system. As you can recall, a couple of years ago, the detail system, there'd been a lot of details that had been uncollected for years and years and years. Those issues were all resolved going forward. What we do is certain details that are new details to us, that we don't know the vendor, we have them pay up front for the detail. The vendors that we do know, they're allowed to pay in arrears, but if they get beyond 60 days, we'll shut them down. We work very well with Larry Prendeville, Commissioner Ramondi over at the DPW to make sure that they don't get issued permits to open the street, and that's worked. At present, we're under $20,000 that's in arrear, that's 60 days in arrear, but most of that money is in transit. We know that certain companies are slow to pay. I know that our detail officers met with Sue, and we've tried to work those issues through. We're under $20,000, and I anticipate most of that will be collected. There's 2 that I think probably won't. One of the businesses went bankrupt for about $700 they owe us. Another was a liquor license that wasn't renewed, and they owe us about $700. But other than that, we should be pretty much up to date going forward. So I'm glad to take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Chief.
Recognize Councilor Pavlovsky.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your willingness to come up tonight to appear before us and have a chat with us about the detail operation and your recommendations for improvement. I understand that, first off, the incidents of double dipping that prompted this review or request are subject of continuing investigation by outside law enforcement agency. So I certainly won't ask any questions specifically about that, and certainly not at this time while that investigation's ongoing. But I do have some questions, hopefully more about the program and the process in general, so I'm sure you'll tell me if we stray too on subject or off subject. But is there a written policy on the detail program at QPD?
Yes, there's a number of different policies.
Okay. When I say what are those, I don't mean what is the language of them, but where are those found? Is there one in like the police contract? Is there one in a...
Well, most of the details are governed by the collective bargaining agreements between the superior officers and the patrol officers. So a lot of the detail rules and regulations and the language that we use comes out of that. We also have some written policies as well. Not specific policies as to who gets what or that type of thing, but there's a lot of policies that are in place as to how the details are given out. They're given out by hours, they're given out by days off, that type of thing. We also have a policy that says that you can't work more than 16 hours. That's a policy that we instituted internally. It's a health and wellness policy that...
One day.
In one day, so that officers don't work 24 or 32 hours or whatever the case may be. And sometimes if they get on these details, they'll just continue to ride the detail and they'll stay there longer than is probably reasonable or common sensical. So that's why we have that detailed policy in place.
And when did that policy come forth? The 60
Years ago, it's been
as long as you've been chief.
a lot longer. It's probably 20 years anyway.
You've been chief for 8 years? The 16-hour rule, is that paid for or actually worked?
That's
Because
actually work time.
All right,
It's not paid time.
Because there's pieces in the contract that allows, like for a detail,
There's
it's a 4-hour
minimums.
minimum, right?
There's
So if you
4-hour
work,
minimum and 8-hour minimum. So if an officer shows up and is there for half an hour, he'd be entitled to 4 hours pay. If he works past the 4-hour, minute past the 4 hours, he'd be entitled to 8 hours pay. Anything over the 8 hours, he's entitled to time and a half, or she's entitled to time and a half.
so the 16-hour rule is actually time worked, 16 hours spent working, not 16 hours of pay.
Correct.
So theoretically, somebody could get paid for far more than 16 hours. And say you work a regular shift, 8-hour shift, show up on a detail, work another 4 hours, that's 12, and then you work 5 minutes past the 4-hour detail, then you have 16 hours, right? And they could then pick up another detail as soon as that 5 minutes after the 4 hours is done and get another 4 hours.
That's correct.
Right, so that would be 20 hours of pay.
Yes.
Okay. Nothing that prevents that?
No, there's nothing presently that prevents that.
Okay.
Although I am looking to change that. I'm in discussion, we're meeting with the unions in the coming weeks. We had to cancel a meeting because of the weather, but we're looking to change that and go on 1 clock. Part of this new software that I'm looking at would mean that you could only be on 1 clock. So you couldn't overlap time and details. So if you were, say for instance, you got a 4-hour detail and you're only there for an hour, you wouldn't be eligible to work till after that 4 hours elapsed. We're looking at, that's one of the changes that I'm looking to make.
Because, I mean, theoretically, there could be 4 details in the city. Someone shows up to the first detail, works an hour, it's done. You know, I mean, say it's a road opening, National Grid or something, right? So the work's done, they don't need the detail anymore. They send them on the way. Guy grabs another detail, works an hour. You could work 4 hours and get 16 hours of detail pay.
Correct.
Theoretically, right?
Yes.
And so you're saying you would like to see us move into the direction of having an actual hours?
Correct. Hour for hour.
So essentially, I mean, the word double dipping has a negative connotation to it, but that's essentially getting paid twice for the same time, but in a legally permissible or a policy permissible way, right?
Contractually permissible.
Contractually permissible
For
way.
that word.
Has the policy been changed since you've been chief at all relative to details?
The way that they've been given out, the way that they've been counted for, yes, it has. And last May, it was about roughly around May, I came out with an order. We were having difficulty filling details, getting officers to the details in the morning. So prior to May, lieutenants and captains were not on the, per se, write-in detail list or the daily detail list. What would happen is they'd be allowed to work details after all the patrol officers and sergeants had been offered those details. I changed that in May to allow them to go into the mix like everyone else, so that we could get them there too. We could get more bodies to details on time because we were receiving complaints. The volume of the details that we had when they come in the morning, a lot of times it takes some time to call to get the officers. The detail officer clerk, Mark Folan, comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning. He starts doing his paperwork till about 5, and then he starts calling details to try and get the officers on time for the 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock details. We had changed that in May. I think the unions, the patrol officers had grieved it, and I wound up losing the grievance. So the lieutenants and captains went back to the way they were at the bottom of the list, essentially. So yes, there has been some changes in the detail policies back and forth. It's kind of a dynamic program. It's not a static program. We instituted policies too, unofficial policies where we prioritize details. In other words, if there was a detail, I don't know, down the end of the neck, down on Wall Street, for a guy doing something up on a pole that wasn't really a priority detail, but we needed somebody in Quincy Square here in the middle of rush hour traffic to direct traffic around a construction site, we prioritize the details and give them out by priority. The more important details or the more visible details, the ones that are bigger intersections and more main streets, we prioritize them as well. And that's something to change.
And you say it's dynamic. I would imagine that some of that has to do with the age of your force, right? I mean, typical that the younger officers a little bit more hungrier for the detail pay and the overtime than when they have.
Absolutely not.
No? Okay.
Just the opposite. The new millennials, you got to beg them to work.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting. All the new crew that's come on, they'll work when they feel like work. And the old guys are hungry. They'd be 85 years old and still out there if they could. The young guys, if the weather's too nice, too bad, too hot, too cold, just right, it's very difficult getting them out there.
Okay. Maybe if we could take a step back and you could indulge me just and kind of walk me through the process of a detail currently before we put this program in place, how it works, from the outs. Let's do a private detail. So an outside vendor comes in, who do they talk to? How does that get posted? How does it get filled? How does it get billed? And then how does it get paid?
To start with, a vendor, if there was a construction, we use construction, I guess, as an example. If a construction company comes in and it's a known construction company, call our detail officer and they request a detail. They may call the night before, they may call the morning of, they may schedule a detail a week in advance, they may go a month in advance. Whatever the case may be, they call our detail officer, who's Mark Folin. He then puts the detail on a list, a sheet, a handwritten detail sheet. He fills out the sheet with the time, the date, the location, and the company that they're working for. At that point, sometimes he'll pre-schedule them. If we know in advance for offices on days off have priority for the details. Then it would go to offices that are on, say for example, 4 o'clock shift or a midnight shift. It would get to them. Then he contacts those offices. He may pre-schedule them a few days in advance if they're on days off, or he may call them that morning, sends them to the detail. What happens is the officer goes to the detail. When he gets there, he does the detail. When the detail's complete, there's a slip that's filled out. He has whoever the foreman on the job sign it mostly. Then that detail slip is turned back into Mark Folin. Mark Folin checks it, records the hours. We keep the details dispersed by hours to be fair and equitable. And if somebody refuses a detail, they're given a refusal hour so that it keeps everybody even, which that's the goal.
I don't understand what you're making.
In other words, if say for instance your call tomorrow morning and for Durbus Construction, just for a better name, they're a great company, they work out here all the time. They're out on the front of the street here, they call for detail. They call you and you say, no, I don't want to work it. You'd get credited for a refusal for 8 hours for that detail. The next officer, it might be me, I accept the detail, I go out and work it, I would get 8 hours as well. So that it keeps it balanced a little bit, so that somebody's not refusing certain details and taking better details and that type of thing.
So
Keeps
if
it
I
fair.
refuse the detail, I'm essentially off the block for 8 hours?
Correct.
Is that what that means?
For the day, actually. You refuse, you're done for the day. So then the slip's turned back into Mark Folin. We have a detail box downstairs. He comes in at 3 in the morning, takes the detail slips, he records them, puts in the hours that you work so they can properly charge the hours to the time that you've worked and keeping that fair and equitable. Then he puts it into the book and the slips are taken over to a payroll clerk over in our payroll section. Then she puts the slips in, they're recorded in a munis and then sent up to City Hall and they generate a bill. The bill's paid, the office is paid anyway within 2 weeks.
The officer's paid no matter what?
Correct.
Regardless of whether the detail...
Correct, and that's contractual as well.
And which it should be, because it's not, they shouldn't have to worry about not getting paid by the contractor or whoever it is. And I think it's been since I've been on the council, it was a budget hearing, I think, where we talked about, you had made the changes to the billing relative to the private companies, that there was all this money in arrears, and we kind of took where you took a tougher attitude towards, and policy towards making sure we get paid, so that the taxpayer isn't...
We've gone after the money, we make phone calls, we follow up, we refer it to the legal office, and anyone that owes money, if they want to pull another permit or they want to work again in the city, they have to pull a permit. Larry Prendeville and Commissioner Ramondi down at the DPW won't issue that permit until it's paid up. And as a matter of fact, we had one the other day. They were working, they requested a detail, they owed us, I think it was $270 thereabouts, and we shut them down. We went up, said, you're not working today in the city until that's we're made whole. They come down and pay. So we are on it. It's not a perfect system, but we're on it.
You would think the fact that you guys carry guns and are looking for money would get paid. But,
We're around built
yeah.
like this essentially.
So, I mean, what did you say we were in arrears at that point, 200,000 or something?
Right now?
No, before we put that in place?
Yeah, it was at least that, yes.
And
But that had gone on, they hadn't collected in years and years and
Right.
years. That wasn't something, that was cumulative. That had gone on for years and years.
Right. Well, it's good to see that I don't think you've ever updated us, or we've ever asked to be updated on how that's changed. So it's good to hear that the taxpayers aren't essentially fronting all this money now, and then there's these private companies or what have you who aren't paying on the back end.
Correct. We're on it as best we can be. And it's come down significantly. And we've continued that.
And so can you speak to the oversight that currently exists, whether through computer software or lack thereof, or just in personnel, of what you do in terms of oversight for the detail, and to make sure that they're filled, make sure that there's nothing that shouldn't be happening.
We do have a detailed checker. The detailed checker goes out by contract in the Superior Office's contract. They go out, it's 18 hours a week, 3 6-hour shifts. Usually it's one during the week or two during the week and then one on the weekend at night. And sometimes they bounce around depending on holidays, that type of thing. They check just to make sure that the officers are there and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. As far as, so in this, there's patrol sergeants are also out there looking at where the officers are as to when they show up and when they leave and making sure that they're on the detail doing what they're supposed to be doing.
The patrol sergeants, they have a list of all the details currently in effect.
They know where they are generally, but the detail checker has a complete list.
At another time, we had a conversation about details in general, and I agreed with your position that it's, this was during the debate when I think Governor Patrick wanted to go to flaggers on taxpayer-funded projects, and we discussed doing that or discussed how that would affect Quincy. We didn't want to go in that direction, but I agreed with you at that time that should something happen in the city, it's better to have police working. I think it's probably not an uncommon experience where an officer sees something happen when they're working on a detail and can respond effectively. It's not like they're going to watch a bank robbery and say, well, I'm overseeing this, this street opening, I'm not going to get involved.
That happens quite frequently where officers self-deploy. When they see something or hear something on the radio, they activate themselves and they'll assist with the officers that are dispatched on shift. If we were ever to have a major incident, sometimes during the day we have 50 or 60 officers that are on details that can be immediately deployed. They all have their radios, they're all in uniform, they all have their firearms, so they could be immediately deployed. So it is an asset to the city. Not only that, it would build out the billing fee, the 10% billing fee, so it does generate funds for the city.
Yeah, I think it's good to have officers doing the details in general on the private and on the public because for that reason, God forbid, worst case scenario, something happens, you have that many more officers who can respond to the scene. So, given what you've experienced in the department over the past 6 months or whatever it has been in the internal investigation that you did, what changes to policy are you recommending, and what changes to procedures are you recommending or instituting?
Part of that will have to be discussed with the unions because it does impact them, to a point. We'll go to I'm looking for the funding for the software program that I think will give us an awful lot more oversight. We're also changing the detailed policies as far as 1 clock. You can only be paid by one entity at one time. So, in other words, if they get there at 7 o'clock in the morning and they let you go at 8 o'clock in the morning, you wouldn't be eligible for another detail or overtime shift or anything until 11 o'clock in the morning until that time is expired. There are departments, not many, that do that. Most of the departments, once you've made your minimum time, if you show up and you get a 4-hour minimum and you're released in a half an hour, then you're free and eligible to work another detail. That's mostly how the system works in other departments. This whole situation that we ran into is not unique. When we had a conversation with the software company says, we make a pretty good living at this, so you're not unique in this situation. If we're developing software, then it's a problem elsewhere. I had conversation with my peers, several different departments, people that were in charge of internal affairs, that were chiefs in different departments, and it's not completely unique to Quincy. This situation's unfortunate, it never should have happened. We won't allow it to happen, but it's not unique just to Quincy. There are other departments that run into this on occasion.
Yeah, I think, just from reading in the newspaper, some of the comments that have been made by the mayor and the mayor's office. It was November 30th, 2015, Mr. Walker, on behalf of the mayor, said anytime there's an issue like this, it prompts a step back to see if there are broader issues. And I think that also suggests that we look to make things better, which I'm glad to see that you are making improvements. And this is certainly a great first step, this recommendation or this request for the funding for the software program. Now, the software program would be able to detect any type of double dipping?
That's what the software is designed to do. What it does is it takes, they call on-duty and off-duty, or on-duty and extra duty. The on-duty part will control our attendance system, so that officers are on days off, they're on overtime, they're on vacation days, personal days, whatever the case may be. It'll be recorded into that system. That system will then contrast with extra duty, compare and contrast those times and dates and times worked, and then if an officer puts in a slip that overlaps, and it will happen because, say for instance, the 8-hour minimum, say for instance you get a defill at 11 o'clock in the morning that goes until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that would be legitimate. They'd be entitled to 8 hours pay. Their time for the city starts at 4 o'clock. So that would be okay, but we'd have to manually go in and override that once we vet that, research it, and then override it. So it should, if in a perfect world, it will work and it will catch those overlaps.
Now, you had said that one of the other, and I appreciate that you don't want to necessarily show your hand in public if you're going to be entering into negotiations with the superiors, officers unions, and the patrolmen's unions relative to contractual language, but so you don't have to specifically say what it is that you're looking to change in there beyond what you've already said. But when is the contract up? I mean, the superior officers just re-signed a contract recently, did they not?
Correct. The contracts are both up being negotiated as we speak.
Yeah, so we're already in the process of negotiating.
Correct.
contracts.
Correct.
Now, one of the other things that was called into question by this incident, or the internal investigation, was the vacation time. It was, again, not getting into the specifics, but there was an issue with vacation time not being taken.
Correct.
Will this software address that, or is there any policies and procedure changes that will be forthcoming to address people not working, but also not taking vacation time as they should be?
The software, I don't believe, would address that because it's only as good as what you put in. And if you don't put in that you're off that day or that you're working that day, it wouldn't take into account that. Part of that is the honor system. Part of that is oversight. We have captains, we have lieutenants, we have sergeants that oversee that.
So a sergeant and a captain might be outranked by someone who's not following a policy, possibly, right? And that creates kind of a system, a problem in the system, you think?
Well, and that's the case, then we'll vet it out, and if we find out, then they'll be held accountable. I
So
don't
is-
anticipate that happening again, to be honest with you.
So there's no changes to policy or procedure relative to taking vacation time, or how vacation time is taken, or how it's checked?
No, I mean, vacation time is all contractual anyway. They're given so much time, they're allowed to take so much time, they're allowed to take individual days, half days, single days. But we track it as best that we can. But as far as the policy goes, I don't know that we need a policy.
Well, there was an incident here where, the one you did the internal investigation on, where I think it was something like 9 vacation days weren't taken,
Correct.
and that was part of the discipline. So I guess what my concern is, one, it was over the course of 5 months, I believe, that 9 vacation days weren't taken, and no one, it didn't come to light until you started investigating it on your own. How that happens 9 times where someone doesn't show up to work but also doesn't take the time off on the books. One, how does that happen? And 2, how do we fix it to make sure it doesn't happen again?
With oversight, that particular individual that we're discussing here was in a unique position. He ran his own unit. At some point, there's some self-responsibility and there's some trust. And that's why I believe he was dealt with so harshly, because he violated the trust. It's as simple as that. You can legislate all you want, you can try and put policies and procedures, but there's always ways around different policies and procedures. So the way that the vacation time or time off, whatever it may be, personal time, the patrol officers have to call in and get permission from a sergeant to take time off. The sergeants have to call in to the shift lieutenants or the shift commander to take time off. The shift commander has to call in and take time off with the captains. So there is accountability, but in the individual units sometimes, like for instance the drug unit or the special operations unit, they run their own units, they control their own time. The officers, the special operations unit, we'll just use them as an example. They have a sergeant in there, so if they wanted a patrol officer wanted a night off, they go to their sergeant and request the time off. Otherwise, they have to be accountable for showing up. This officer was in a unique position to take advantage of that.
And it's disappointing that it happened, but in terms of the vacation policy, is that something that's in the contracts?
The vacations, yes.
Okay. But not just the number of days, but how in which they take it? That's in the
Correct.
contract, that's
They're entitled to two weeks vacation time in the summer between, don't hold me to the dates, between the beginning of June and the middle of September. Each officer in the department's entitled to 2 weeks of vacation guaranteed. The rest of the time is discretionary. It's up to the commanding officers or to me, depending on overtime needs and staffing levels, as to whether we grant them vacation. But generally speaking, they can request a vacation. They could, for example, they could call right now and say, possible to get a night off tonight at midnight. And if we didn't have to hire, we met our mandatory or minimum requirements, they'd be allowed to take vacation time off. They can take it in full day increments, half day increments, and also the 2 weeks in the summer.
And so you had said, again, forgive me if I'm delving too into specifics here, just, feel free to cut me off on it, but I'm just processing some of the things that you've told me tonight about the oversight of the detail operation. And one of the things that kind of jumps out at me is, so you have a superior officer who's a detail checker, contractually. I think you said 18 hours a week.
Correct.
So how, if you can speak to it, how would, for example, 21 incidents of not doing a detail or doing a detail during performance of your regular duties, how would that not be caught sooner than the 5-month period?
That particular situation, the detail officer, the detail checker that we have, he goes out in the street to make sure the officers are out there. He doesn't check the hours. He doesn't check what time they get there, what time they put in for, that type of thing. That's handled by the officer themselves.
Okay.
So they go out and make sure that, the officers are in uniform, they're where they're supposed to be, they're doing what they're supposed to be, essentially on the street.
Okay. So, I mean, that's fair enough. I don't have your knowledge of the investigation. Obviously, I only know what we've discussed offline tonight and what I read in the paper. So I'll leave it at that because I don't want to go too far down that road on the specifics of this. Let me just ask you, in the 8 years that you've been chief, has there been any other investigations relative to double dipping by officers? And I certainly don't want to know their name or what the outcome was. No. So would it be fair to say that in your opinion this is a isolated incident?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
This program, again, and I'm going to support when it comes up for a vote, I'm going to support it because, I think we have to for the sake of ensuring taxpayer monies are being adequately monitored and overseen, as well as I think we have some legal liability relative to private contractors who get details and making sure that those are filled appropriately and worked appropriately. So I'm going to support that. But so I have another question about the software. Will you be able to plug in the old slips and look backwards to ensure that this was an isolated incident?
It'd be incredibly cumbersome to do that. I wouldn't do it. And that would take forever to do that, to go backwards in time. I think that would take forever to do. I don't know. I'm sure that the software is probably capable of doing it, but we'll look to go online when we put the software up and go forward, not backwards.
And I think
I'm not even sure the software could do it, but I know that you'd have to input years and years worth of data, and the data would be from about 5 or 6 different sources, and it'd be all of the work schedules, all of the detail schedules, all of the overtime schedules. The reason this investigation took the time that it took is because we had to look at about 5 or 6 different places as to where the time was utilized and where the times came from and where they overlapped.
Right, and some instances using a paper system.
It's all
paper system, right?
For the most part, it's all paper.
I can appreciate that that's cumbersome.
And it's actually 3 different people that are inputting that paperwork. There's the detail officer, Mark Foreman. There's the payroll clerk, Diane. There's the overtime payroll person, Elaine. They all input different aspects of the time, overtime details, what time, all that. They all of them input it differently. So one really doesn't see what the other one's doing. Which this software, I think, will bring all that together. They can all input it the way they are. There'll be some changes, of course, with the software and a learning curve, but once they input all that information into it, the computer will now compare and contrast all that time.
And it'll tick up a report and throw a red flag up to somebody that, hey, something doesn't look right, and they'll put a set of eyes on it.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, lastly, does the overtime system work the same way as the detail system? How does the overtime procedures work?
To a point, the overtime can be just about anything. Say, for instance, we were looking to hire a person for the midnight shift, midnight to 8 shift. They would call out, it generally goes by hours. They would normally hire somebody on the 4 to midnight shift first because they're already
I'm sorry,
here.
when you say hire, you mean hire for the overtime?
For overtime. They're already here, so they'd be hired first. If we were looking to schedule people tomorrow morning, we have some overtime tomorrow morning, then Mark can do it essentially by hours for people that are on days off. The officers are on days off first. Of course, if we were hiring overtime for a patrol officer, it'd be a patrol officer that's hired. If it was a sergeant opening, it'd be a sergeant opening hired. So it's essentially the same by hours, by days off.
Okay, and will this program also raise red flags if there's something fishy going on relative to overtime?
Correct. It all brings it together. It takes essentially your regular hours that you're supposed to be working, whatever you're scheduled for. It compares that with whatever else. It could be overtime, it could be training time, it could be court time, it could be detail time, it could be time due that you've earned that you want to take. It will compare and contrast all of that and red flag anything that overlaps.
I thank you, Chief. As I had said, I'm going to support the expenditure of the money for the program. I think sounds like it's unfortunately needed, not for the vast majority of officers or for anybody other than perhaps retroactively for one person. But this has been, I think the whole combination of this is really, it's disappointing, sad really, for the city, for the QPD. I think it's unnecessarily puts a black eye on a department that otherwise does a fantastic job. Fine men and women working there really care about the city and serving the city in a very professional way. So I thank you for your willingness to have this chat with us, and perhaps further down the line we'll have another conversation about it when it's more appropriate relative to the specifics of this particular instance. But certainly for tonight's purposes, you've satisfied my questions, and I'll
Thank you, Councilor. That being said, what I am pretty pleased at is we were the ones that found this out. We were the ones that investigated it. We were the ones that addressed it, and we're going to be the ones that fix it. And I'm pleased with that. Our internal affairs department officers did a good job. It was brought to our attention. We didn't walk away. We dealt with it head on. We got in front of it. And the chips fell where they may. It's disappointing, but we were in front of it. We were on top of it.
Thanks, Chief.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor King.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief Keenan. Just have a few questions, clarifications here. At the beginning, I heard you say that there's an antiquated payroll system, but here we're looking at a detail management software. Is this going to be a fully integrated solution, so it's going to combine overtime systems, training, court, as you just mentioned?
Yes, that's correct. It'll take all those into account.
Oh, it'll take them all into account?
It's got even an awful lot more. It's like basically a management system on steroids. It actually, we can pre-program offices when we get to that stage. We'll implement it backwards first. We'll put the detail portion in initially, and we'll utilize that. When we get used to that, we'll go forward. You can actually pre-schedule. Offices will be able to schedule and request time off on their cell phones. If they want next Tuesday night off, they can make a request. That request will go to the supervisor to either be approved or denied, and then that will be scheduled right then and there. So it's a pretty powerful program from what I understand.
Kind of just going back one step. Are we at all putting the cart before the horse and implementing new systems or new policies and procedures have been put into place?
No, it'll go in at the same time, essentially.
It'll go at the same time.
So there's not dramatic changes to the policies and procedures, but there will be some changes. That's something we can do pretty quickly.
Okay.
Sit down and meet with the two unions and come together and make some kind of a solution, and joint solution.
So the two timelines are looked at sort of concomitantly. We'll be meeting at the same place.
Correct.
What's that timeline looking like?
Depending on the appropriation, depending on how quickly we can get the software up and running, we'll look at about a month and a half. That's what on that basis as a whole.
You said that there are 3 vendors that were identified, assessed. Who were the assessors, the vendors that were?
Who are they?
Yeah.
It's Jivasoft is the one that we're looking at going with. The other one, Boston Police presently use. We interviewed that gentleman, he came out, and that system seemed a little bit flawed. It didn't take into account a lot of the time, like the court time and some of the overtime. It didn't compare and contrast that into the mix. So I think there were loopholes with that. I wasn't pleased with that system. It was a little bit more expensive. There was another system that essentially didn't do the on-duty type of activity, and that was far more expensive as well. So we went actually with the most reasonable company, the cheapest, essentially the cheapest company, which I think actually was the best.
And the reference communities are Boston, are there others that use this successfully?
Correct. I don't have the list in front of me, but the list was pretty extensive.
But Boston's primary.
No, Boston was the one that we did not.
Was the one that you did not select?
Correct. I think that was an inferior system. Their system was designed more because they had grievances from unions about giving the details out fairly and equitably, not getting back in and contrasting and comparing the times for overlap. It was more getting those details distributed properly to the office that was lowest in hours, and they've got just in different districts, and it was more designed for that.
And I'm assuming that you led the assessment of these vendors?
I was involved, actually, there was a committee, there was myself, there was Lieutenant Sullivan, Captain Dugan, the detail officer, Mark Boland, and Joe, PRIT person.
And the $39,000 that's being requested, what does that cover? Is that a one-time payment? Does that cover training? Does that cover?
That's a one-time payment, server upgrades, software, training, and then there's a $6,000 a year maintenance fee, the maintenance fee, and the first year is included.
The first year's included, so your regular will have to re-up on the license.
Correct, I'll be asking as well. I have a bunch of different software maintenance fees that I pay out of my budget now, so I'll include that in that next fiscal year.
And my last question, and who will be managing this?
It'll be managed by the payroll people, the detail officer. It'll be managed by our IT person, Joe Petronich. He will oversee the software part of it. The import will, the inputting of the data will be done by the people that do it presently. It'll be the desk sergeants, the desk lieutenants, the captains. I can check it. I can actually check this stuff. I check it on my iPad. I can connect to the station, check the losses and things on my iPad. But the people that normally input all that information, that data now, will continue to do that. But the actual system will be run by Joe Lee on IT.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Madam President. Thank you, Chief King.
Thank you, Councilor King. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Yes, Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chief, good evening. Thank you for coming this evening. I don't want to recycle everything that was already said there, but I do just want to point out a couple of things. I heard quite a bit, as I'm sure you did, from my constituent community about the unfortunate situation that is still pending. People were disappointed. I'll leave it at that. But as much as we focus on maybe unfortunate situations, I think it's also important to recognize those men and women who are doing the right thing and hold themselves accountable and walking out if they see fit. I just want to go on record and say that I have a lot of respect for those men and women who carry that badge and protect our city on a daily basis. It's a very courageous job. Like I said, I fielded many phone calls relative to this particular issue, and listening and processing to both my colleagues and your testimony here this evening. I believe you said police officer for 32 years, right?
I am.
You've been in the leadership position for 8, so that's a long time. And there's been,
That just means I'm old.
your experience, right? So I do a lot of time, spend a lot of time out here thinking about my business when I'm at my day job, and I have to assume you do the same thing. Leading up to this point, you said that it's a very archaic system that we currently have. So that was a known factor, right, leading up to this unfortunate situation. So I guess this is a question that I was asked on the telephone, because to take a situation like this, to promote change, to implement change. Was there not any vision or foresight to say, okay, we're operating off a very archaic system, and maybe, I don't know when the time was, but you'd be up before us at a budget hearing saying, counselors, here's one of the issues that I'm dealing with. Because, thank God for technology. It allows us to evolve, it allows us to change in a positive way. But I guess my question is, does it take up to today to figure we need change, we need help, we need an upgrade?
Well, we're always changing, we're continually upgrading our systems. This wasn't a system that was really broken. It's an old system, but it wasn't a system designed to detect abuse. And it's been an effective payroll system for all these years, really. If it wasn't broken, there's no real need to fix it. Now, we've had this situation, so now we look forward to improving upon the system and fixing the system going forward. But would we have probably looked at this had this not been for this situation? Probably not, because things seem to be going fine. But whenever we detect something we want to improve upon, we're continually upgrading all of our computer systems. Every day we look to do something a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently. And, it's definitely time for this. So.
I just wonder, does this get on your radar pre-today's date? And the reason I say that is, you shared with me the distributor and the salesperson that said that basically, situations like this are keeping us in business. So I have to imagine that folks like that are trying to get in front of your department to market their services.
We actually had to search these people out. No one's ever approached me with this type of software in the past. We get approached all the time for new gadgets, new software, new hardware, new vehicles. There's constantly people that are bombarding us with new and better ways of doing things. We always do take a look at it. If it's a system that we need to look at, we need to improve on. We take a look at the computer software. We've got a ton of new software. We've got different investigative software. We're always looking to improve on that. So we do have our eyes open. When these vendors do come in, we do, for the most part, listen to them. So we're always looking to improve.
Final question and a comment. I heard it discussed a little bit. I believe Councilor Kane had alluded to the training piece. Does the implementation of this software package, is this going to be an additional headcount hire from the FY 17 budget? Facilitate this, or you have the resources, you have manpower in place now to execute?
You're talking from a manpower standpoint, or
Right,
from,
you're going to have to hire someone additional? No,
it won't require anybody. It's just, we have a system in place, a payroll system, we have an attendance system in place. Most of the payroll stuff is all by hand. The attendance is computerized as it is now, so none of that will change. The only thing is it'll have a different view. It'll look a little bit differently when the sergeant's putting the information in down at the desk, or the lieutenants are putting it in, or we'll go to recover information. It's just be a learning curve as to what the software is capable of doing. So there'll be no new positions that I'm looking for in relationship to this. In relation to this, the only thing that'll be different is the annual maintenance fee, and we have a number of those different maintenance fees that come and go as well.
And just a final comment, as long as I've been up there, that sounds like I'm old, but it hasn't been that long. I've known this body to be a proponent of public safety. So as you go back to your daily activities and begin to, think where you can improve, whether it's from a technological standpoint, what have you, I know that this is something that Council Palucci and myself have, come to the table over the years saying what would be helpful for us is some sort of capital asset plan. In a perfect world, what would your wish list look like over 3 or 5 years? Not that you get it, but it would give us more perspective, a benchmark to kind of work off of going forward.
The mayor's actually asking, and I believe some of the other departments to put that together. I'm in the process of doing that now as we speak. A lot of the computer software that we get, especially the investigative software, you can't even fathom the software that we do have and the capabilities that we do have. Thankfully, we're part of the Boston UASI group. We get a lot of funding, a lot of software, a lot of investigative software, homeland security cameras, homeland security software, infrastructure upgrades through those sources, through the grant funding sources. So you don't have to come before you and ask for the city, the taxpayers to bear that burden. We're lucky in that respect, but we are putting together a capital improvement plan. I believe it's a 1-year, 5-year, and then 10 years. We're looking to do the mayor's asked us to do that right now.
Prayer's going to be answered out there. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your share.
Thank you, sir.
With that, I'll send it back to the chair.
Thanks. Councilor Forrest. Thank you.
Thank you. Through your hands to Shekinah. Chief, on the software program that we have on for probation this evening, that has a Munis integration, I assume?
Yes, that's correct.
I know that Mike had spoken with and had a pending resolution prior with Auditor O'Connor about how we could capitalize, and I think we just called it some plug-in, that, you know, as a city council, we get our paycheck or direct deposit slip in the mail with a 48-cent stamp every week. And what opportunities there are, you know, holistically citywide for kind of streamlining it and moving to an electronic platform as far as payroll. So I'm glad to hear that the technology you're acquiring obviously integrates with us. That's critical for us. One thing I should say to Councilor Cole's point is I've been very impressed with your department on their technology and keeping it at the forefront. QuincyPolice.org, you spent time in your office with Captain Bona in the past, scrolling through, here's an area we're trying to look and drill down some crime stats, and right now you've made that information publicly available. So I really wanted to say how impressed I've been with you on the technology side, particularly with the website, with the texted crime tip, the anonymous options, you know, the speed radar, and the data that you're able to derive from that has been particularly helpful for me. So I just, while we're on the tech topic, really wanted to share my appreciation for the public access to information that you've been able to give. And did want to just double back, you know, Councilor Bowman, you really went into depth, and like Councilor Crowell, and been receiving constituent calls and about, is it a systemic problem, is it a unique situation with the detail? And so I just wanted to, maybe in closing, heavily reiterate, the patrol officers reported to the sergeant, who's, I think it might have been just a bit lost in translation. There's a lot of questions there as far as what that oversight is. We do have oversight in place as far as reporting. This was a particular situation because you had one of your command staff who was self-reporting by default of what his position was, versus typically your chain of commands, the patrol, the sergeants, sergeants going to lieutenant, lieutenants going to captain. In this situation, the lieutenant is going to the lieutenant. Created a unique situation, and that lieutenant's position now reports to a specific captain, right? So
Correct. That was unique.
Explain that. I think we all speak in the command staff chain. The public, we do have an audience at home trying to understand this, and I want to make sure that the taxpayer understands why the situation was unique and it isn't systemic throughout your department.
Well, the patrol officers that are in patrol show up at roll call midnight 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. They have to check in a roll call, they're inspected, they have to answer up that they're there. People in the specialized units have a little bit more freedom, but they have supervisors that know where they are, where they are, and what time they're supposed to be, where they are. A lot of the hours, we're a 24-hour operation. So, and we have a number of different units with the drug units, marine units, CP units. They all start at different times, they all work different hours, and sometimes to accomplish their mission, they swap their hours. Classic example sometimes is the drug unit. They may come in at different hours of the day. Today they may come in at noontime, tomorrow they may come in at 10 o'clock at night. It depends on when the business is and what they're involved in with the investigation. So but they are accountable to a sergeant and a lieutenant in that unit. So as you go up the ladder, everyone's usually accountable to something.
And so, for example, day to day, let's take a specialty unit, the secret drug unit, that officer comes in, reports to the sergeant, my shift is what I'm working on, the sergeant's aware, and the week the sergeant's writing this report to the lieutenant's submitting it. Would that be a typical flow?
No, what happens is if they come in, the sergeant would get into the computer and log them in as being working or off or vacation day or whatever it may be. They keep attendance, their own attendance. Each unit keeps their own attendance.
The unit keeps the attendance.
Correct. Individual units keep their attendance. The patrol division, they go to roll call, it's the desk sergeant who keeps that attendance.
And that patrol division reports to patrol captain, the specialty units, each have a captain that they are then reporting to.
Correct.
And in this particular incident that was newsworthy, the lieutenant was self-reporting to himself, the lieutenant, that loophole has since been closed.
I don't want to get into specifics with him, but
That's
kind of how it goes.
I respect that, Chief. I understand there's been a lot going on. I just want, to let the department know, like another thing Council Paul said, this department, difficulty here, this being reported in the media, and this being identified. I appreciate you stepped up, you took responsibility. I will say, we have a great department, they're always very responsive, always great to our constituents. I think you are doing a lot proactive. So thank you for being here and for your time this evening, Chief.
Thank you.
Councilor Devon.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief Keenan, for coming by here tonight. I'm just listening to all the councilors here tonight. I echo a lot of what Brad Cole said, our council next to me here. I remember when we were talking about steroids earlier. I remember when Mark McGuire and the whole gang were up there in front of Congress and said, I don't want to talk about the past. It's kind of like, I don't want to talk about what has happened. What I really want to talk about is the accountability from this day forward. And that's what really this is all about for having you here tonight. And I kind of want to get into this software. You were talking about, you log in, you do it from your cell phone. Is there going to be a way of, when you get onto these details, that you're able to actually GPS yourself, whether it be through your vehicle or whether it be through your phone, that you're there, you're actually clocking in and you're clocking out. And I like what you said about, and this goes back to Councilor Pamucci, with the, you could be on the job for 5 minutes and get authorization for 4 hours, and we were talking about going into real time, real working time.
Right.
You're looking to really move forward with that real working time instead of the, you get 4 hours, and if you get over the 4 hours, you get 8 hours.
That's contractual.
That's
That's
contractual.
not something I have any control over whatsoever.
Okay.
As far as GPS tracking, that will become an issue. If we ever attempted to do that, or if we do attempt to do that at some point, I know the technologies, every day the technology is advancing. I don't know if that software is capable of doing that. I don't think it is. There'd probably have to be some kind of another software design that interfaces with it. But that's not something I'm looking at, because there again, I can't imagine the Union City still for that. Because throughout the country, there's automatic vehicle locators that are in some of the vehicles throughout the country. They're probably 99% of them are in non-union states and non-union cities and towns. So that would be something we'd have to sit down at a negotiating table with and negotiate that in. It's not something that's without the realm of possibility. The automatic vehicle locators, they're available as we speak. So, it's not something that's, in the Jetsons in the 20s and 50s, it's here.
On these details, the private vendors, who actually is paying for the detail? Now, does a percentage go towards the city or the taxpayer, or does a percentage go to that private vendor's going to pay? Can you kind of walk me through how
Sure.
the payment?
Say for example, just for lack of a better word, Stop and Shop, they hire details. They hire, say, from 8 to midnight. What happens is they would pay that detail directly to the city with a 10% donation fee attached to it. So if the detail was $160, let's just say, the city would be getting $16, so it'd be $176. So that's how that's handled. The individual that hires the detail. Now we're talking about details, not overtime, not overtime, not training time. That comes out of the city funds. Okay. The detail fund comes directly from whoever engaged that detail, whoever hired the detail officer, whether it be a construction company, a local bar, or a local restaurant, or whatever they would pay.
Do you have an idea of how much detail was paid this previous year?
A little over 300 million, almost 3,600,000 thereabouts.
Okay, and what are we at to date here for 15, 16? Is that what we're at?
2,200,000, I think.
So we're a little above what we had last year already, going into February, middle of February here, so we still have until basically June 30th to go. We're pretty hot. So what are we projected to, if we stay at that pace, or you stay at that pace, where are we at, number-wise?
Probably about 4 million thereabouts, because it's just, the winter is a little bit quieter, obviously, because of the weather factors and that type of thing. It picks up in other ways, but as far as the outside details, most of the details slow down in January, February, and then they'll start picking back up in March.
Okay. I do like this, and I'm gonna along with, I guess the other councilors, is go along with the software, with the contingent that, there's gonna be some type of, who's gonna go to the table and negotiate this deal. We're gonna, there's gonna be more of a accountability, micromanage style system. was just not going to be put in place because these events had happened. And, I have to thank you for coming in here tonight, speaking with the rest of us. And like I said, I don't really want to talk too much about the past, and that's in another body, in other hands. But I want to thank you. Thanks.
Well, the upside too is we do have a good working relationship, my administration with both unions. They both want to put their heads together, us working both unions, their board. We're going to come together and try and fix the problem. So that's what I'm
Thank you, Chief.
Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak? Councilor Lang.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Chief. Thank you for coming down and answering the questions that we all had here today. I just have one question for you that wasn't asked. You said that when there are any red flags that come up or if there are any time slots that overlap, that it will be looked at, but then it can also be overridden. Can you just answer who will be looking at that and who has the authorization to override it? And then if there's any oversight for that person that then overrides it? Like, is it, if I were to go in and I were authorized to override it, is my name tagged to that, and then there's just somebody that can see
Yes.
how many overrides we're doing?
There is a trail, there's a footprint as to who overrode it. Any detail that, or any of the time lapse that are overridden will come through my office. It'll be looked at by the Lieutenant in Internal Affairs, who presently is Lieutenant Sullivan. And then Lieutenant Sullivan will be retiring in a little over a year, and we're going to miss him, but he'll be replaced by somebody that will come in my office that will be part of their function as well. And then the captain will oversee that.
Okay, so that'll be looked at every time there's an override then, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. That's all.
What
Thank
will
you.
happen is it will send an alert. It'll have to be overridden by a superior officer, and no one will have access to that other than someone in my office.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Finn.
Thank you, Madam President. Chief, again with this, I think the quote is from G.K. Chesterton, that the one dogma that he had no difficulty with was original sin. And I think it's very important to keep in mind that no matter what a system is put in place, there's always going to be someone or some person who's capable of gaming that system. And that can be an automated system, a manual system, whatever. And that's why I think in relation to this particular incident, I know it has to be demoralizing to many of the officers that you oversee in relation to this because of the negative reflection that it casts upon them. And of course, I think most of us know that when you refer to an honor code, that most, if not all, adhere to that in terms of their daily duty. But I don't want anyone to leave also with kind of a false impression related to the consequences in relation to this. That because any system can be gamed, it's absolutely critical that, and again, and I'm a big believer in due process, and everybody needs to have the opportunity. But when something kind of essentially amounts to theft in some way, people have to be held accountable immediately. I know that there's other interests, as Councilor Pellucci pointed out, or other jurisdictions higher up than our own are looking into this in some way. But the impression out there oftentimes in terms of how harsh this particular disciplinary action is or not, I'm not in a position to gauge, but there's many out there who don't think it was particularly harsh. And again, I just think it's critical to understand and know that that's it, but moving forward, putting the past aside, I think there really needs to be a powerful response when people try to game the system like this. So, again, I know that's more of a comment than a question. I'm going to support anything in terms of technology that better integrates systems and provides better tools to be able to oversee that. I thought it was just important that should be said because those are the calls I'm getting.
I understand. I understand that, whenever you determine discipline, it can be subjective. And putting this case aside, I always do what I believe is in the best interest of the citizens of Quincy Police Department. And I try and make that determination based on what's in everybody's best interest. And, you weigh the evidence and the penalty. I did that in this case. I consulted with people in my profession as to how these issues are handled and not normally what the general discipline is. I had to weigh the fact that this is a serious incident, and I want this person held accountable. I wanted to do it without long and protracted legal wrangling and that type of thing. I thought I came to a reasonable solution, that I made the recommendation that I made based on those factors, what was in the best interest of the department, what was strong enough that would dissuade anyone from ever trying to do this type of activity and going forward, holding the person accountable that was involved in this. It's a serious penalty. Maybe it's not as serious as you may think. I've heard pros and cons. I've heard it, and it runs the gamut. It was a decision I made. I stand by the decision. I consulted with the mayor. I gave him what I believe was a package that was in the best interest of the citizens and the department. And that's how I reached that decision, essentially. I know it's subjective. I know some people may not think it's harsh enough. Some may think it's too harsh, but thank you, Chief.
Anyone else? All right, well, I'd like to thank you, Chief. Just briefly, I know everyone's had a chance to speak. I want to echo the comments of Councilor Finn and thank him for his question, because it's courageous and was troubling. However, these things are not unique to Quincy, as you noted, and the fact that there is a company out there that reps software that fixes this means that we're not unique, and that this is something that happens. And so it's important to put things in that context and realize that, but not negate the again, egregious nature of this particular and troubling aspects of this particular instance. But I really want to thank you because it's not easy. Again, you are the decision maker in that particular case, and there are consequences for making decisions, and you have many considerations, not just what we have public trust, public interest at large, but also contractual obligations, union obligations, employment law consequences that you have to think about when you make these determinations. So I want to thank you for coming in here and answering those questions. I want to thank Councilor Finn for asking that question, because it is important to address past behavior and also to address how we're going to change things going forward. And so with that, I would just like to recognize Councilor Kroll at this particular point. Councilor?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just put in the form of a motion to take Council Order 2016-51 out of order. I guess continue the conversation regarding the appropriation.
All right, Mr. Clerk is going to read the appropriation.
On the recommendation of the police chief, and with the approval of his honor the mayor, the sum of $38,922 is hereby appropriated to police department contractual, same to be charged to free cash.
Councilor? Okay, there's a motion to pass. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Councilor Palmucci. On the motion?
Council Kane.
Yes.
No, sorry. Call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Council Kane.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Clark.
Yes.
Council Liang.
Yes.
Council Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members. We all pass.
Thank you. Thanks again, Chief.
Thank you very much for your consideration. Have a good evening.
Item number 2.
Item number 2.
Presentation by the administration, Urban Revitalization and Development Plan Amendment number 3,
All right, very well.
including the Quincy side MBTA solution.
Thank you. And I believe we have the planning director, Mr. Fatsis, is here this evening. Mr. Fatsis, is it the first time here as the planning director in front of the body?
No, actually, I did a little time over at the school committee building, but
It's the first time.
if Brian says it's the first time, who would I?
It feels like the first time.
I would recognize it.
But, Madam President, through you to the council and Councilor Palmucci as well, tonight I'm before you to request an amendment to the URDP, which is the Urban Revitalization and Development Plan. This is initiated by Mayor Cope and the Department of Planning and Community Development. what I'd briefly like to read into the record is the reason for this third amendment. But before I do so, I'd like to make clear, some members of the council had seen an amendment called Amendment 3 to the UIDP. That amendment expired, and this Amendment 3 is simply the request for one action, and that action was included in the prior Amendment 3, but this Amendment 3 is only a request that is based on taking the MBTA station and putting it into the project area. And so I'd like for people at home to understand, as a result of the recent changes to the property conditions abutting the original UIDP project area, this third amendment describes an expanded project area that will now include additional distressed properties that would benefit from the UIDP actions and the tools of this third amendment. This additional property is the Quincy Center MBTA station, as shown on the maps that are attached to the amendment. The property is being incorporated into the UIDP area because the Quincy Center MBTA parking garage has been closed since 2012 due to concerns about structural issues within the garage portion of the building. Therefore, since the garage needs to be redeveloped, the city is completing an engineering study with the MBTA, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, known as DCAM, to determine the best economic reuse of this property consistent with the goals and objectives of the UIDP. Having said that, this is good news. As many of you know, in 2011, the state allowed us or gave us a TOD grant, which is a transportation grant of about $50,000 to take a look at this issue. In 2013, we were given a federal grant, or a TCSP grant, which basically allowed us, and that stands for Transportation Community System Preservation Grant, of $978,000 to take a look at our T station and to move forward. We have now since applied for a Tiger grant, which is a federal transportation grant. And to talk more about that, I'd like to invite Frank Tramontosi up to speak. He has overseen the federal application for the Tiger grant, and which is a transportation infrastructure grant for the Quincy Center MBTA station. And I will point out that we also have aboard tonight members from Parsons Brinkerhoff who have been engaged by the city to help us move forward with the, if you will, renovation of the Quincy Center MBTA station. So with your acquiescence, I'd like to ask Mr. Tramontosi to come forward and share some thoughts on what we're doing and kind of give you a timetable of where we are with the downtown, with the MBTA station.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have 3 boards that would like to set up for you, and I have one handout, so I think we're going to indulge us for a moment just to set up the boards. And we have extra copies for those who are interested. So the boards that we're setting up are just diagrammatic. I'll give you a little bit of background information and describe what we've done to date. First, I'd like to introduce the consultant team members that are here tonight. Teresa Vangelli, Andy Boyd, and Margaret O'Meara. They're from the consulting firm of WSP Parsons, and they are the firm that are helping us in this particular project. In terms of the background, in 2007, the Quincy Center Urban Revitalization District Plan was adopted by the city. The MBTA station was not included yet. And then, as you know, in December of 2010, the new Quincy Center land disposition agreement was approved between the city and Hancock Adams Associates, otherwise known as Streetworks. Streetworks then strongly supported in MBTA rehabilitation, but it was not part of that redevelopment plan at the time. And as Jim had mentioned, we had received $50,000 in state grant to study some potential transit-oriented development opportunities for Quincy Center MBTA station. And we had contracted out with VHB then, and they completed their study in June of 2012 with their analysis. And then shortly after that, 1 month later, in July 3rd, the day before 4th of July, the MBTA closed the parking garage. They deemed it a safety hazard and that it was beyond economic repair. And the Quincy Center MBTA garage remains closed today. We received $1 million in a federal grant, the Transportation Community and System Preservation Program. In that grant, which is administered through MassDOT, it's basically 80% federally funded and was intended to be 20% city funded. However, we came to an agreement with the state that they would provide the 20% funding. So 100% of the roughly $1 million that we needed to do the study for the future MBTA Quincy Center Station is funded by federal and state funds. In August of 2014, the legislature passed and the governor signed into law Chapter 79 of the Acts of 2014. That was the Transportation Bond Bill, an act financing improvements to the Commonwealth's transportation system. In that bill, signed into law, the city of Quincy was designated as the principal or lead planning entity for the Quincy Center redevelopment. It also instructed the state agencies, obviously the MBTA and MassDOT, since they own the facility and was responsible for it, to participate along with DCAM, Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, in the trial court system and any other public entity affected and interested to the full extent possible in redeveloping the Quincy Center MBTA station. The act also talked about a courthouse to be developed, a possible courthouse on that on the MBTA land. It also authorized, that same act authorized the city to enter into as the lead agency, to enter into a public-private partnership for the construction of this particular project. And I can explain that a little bit later. And I know that this will go into committee and there'll be a public hearing on it, and we'll have time to answer a lot of questions in detail, but I wanted to give you a quick overview on that anyway. In September of 2014, we actually entered into that agreement with MassDOT for the expenditure of that $1 million. And then on October, we actually signed a contract with WSP Parsons to help us do the preliminary engineering and permit analysis for the project. Now, since then, I want to describe a little bit of what we've done and what our basis has been. Sometime around that same time frame, just before the law was passed, the Chief Justice of the trial courts approached Mayor Koch and asked Mayor Koch if there was any property in the downtown that they could use to develop a new courthouse, because the existing courthouse, I think most people know, is bursting at the seams, and basically the trial court system said that they are building other full justice centers throughout the Commonwealth, in that they needed a full justice center in Quincy Center to replace the existing courthouse. But Mayor Koch looked at the closing of the garage as a possible opportunity, and that's how the law actually ended up getting passed, with Mayor Koch working with the legislature to try and find a home for the new Justice Center. Now, what Mayor Koch also felt was this is an opportunity, since the station was in such disrepair anyway, to build a grand station at Quincy Center. Because Quincy deserves a station. It's the gateway to our city and the gateway to our downtown. The vision would be that the station would be fully renovated with modern conveniences, fully accessible, handicap accessible, with new lighting, mechanical and electrical and security systems. The busway itself, as you know, the buses enter and exit on Hancock Street. The vision would be to move the busway over to the Bergen Parkway side of the station. The kiss and ride portion and the taxi cabs will remain on the Hancock Street side of the station. However, the buses, 14 buses that originate and terminate at Quincy Center would actually originate and terminate on the Bergen Parkway side of the station. The garage itself would be demolished all the way down to its first floor slab, and a new parking structure would be built. The first level of the parking structure would contain a new busway, and the buses will pull off of Bergen Parkway into the new busway, where passengers from those 14 bus routes would actually be able to disembark and load on buses undercover, so that they're not subject to the rain and snow conditions that they see today. The upper floors of the garage would be built to accommodate parking of vehicles. And the parking structure itself would house basically the same number of parking spaces as currently exist in the condemned parking garage. Of course, everything would be new, new lighting, new security systems, elevators, payment stations, and all of that. And then the ground floor itself would have retail, as well as an enhanced MBTA police substation. And then the new Justice Center could be accommodated, one possibility, and we've been looking at many possibilities to present for future consideration. But the Justice Center can be developed on the northerly side of the site, where you have the existing helix that would actually come down, and the MBTA land extends all the way to Dimmock Street. So we were envisioning that the new courtrooms and the facilities associated with the court, the Justice Center itself, would all be able to be accommodated within the MBTA property on the northern side of the site and over the tracks in the parking garage area. On the southerly side, behind City Hall, we would cover the tracks so that we could create green space, basically a continuation of the Adams Green that is being constructed, and also an office building that could be used to house the National Park Service so that they could actually have a permanent home now in downtown Quincy. The ground level of the office tower could accommodate the trolley, the National Park Service trolley system by creating a trolley bus way, similar to on the MBTA side where the trolleys would enter and exit from Bergen Parkway, and then customers would be able to load and disembark undercover so that the rain and snow would not be affecting their customers. So basically, the program would be to rebuild and modernize the MBTA station, rebuilding the parking garage itself, relocating the courthouse, and relocating office space to accommodate the National Park Service and other needs. Now, WSP Parsons and the city have been working together since their contract, and we've surveyed the existing site and existing site plans, surveyed the cultural and historic resources of the area. We've met with the MBTA on site and had several meetings with the MBTA operations staff to assess their needs, including all new mechanical, electrical, and security systems. We've met with the trial court system and the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance on their needs, and have visited other new Commonwealth Justice Centers in the state for comparison purposes to determine what Quincy Center could be. They also helped us develop the Tiger Grant application to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And we've met with the state MEPA unit, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act unit, on how we could incorporate the program into our downtown redevelopment plan. So now we are at the point we are ready to begin the public process. Beginning with this meeting here tonight, in future public information meetings with anybody interested as well as all the stakeholders. We need to meet with MEPA again regarding the program and provide them with additional information regarding greenhouse gas emissions and to seek a notice of project change once the URDP is approved to include the Quincy Center MBTA station. We need to continue to meet with the stakeholders and develop the program further, and we need to meet with the public so that the public can help us to shape the project. Then we need to develop an RFQ so that we can seek a concessionaire and enter into a public-private partnership using the design, build, operate, maintain, and finance procurement methods that the Commonwealth allows us to do, or has authorized us. And then we need to get the project built. So that's it in a nutshell. It's important for us to expand the URDP to include this so that we can move forward. It will save us quite a bit of time and money if it's included in the URDP so that we can move forward with the MEPA unit in developing our notice of project change for the downtown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman Tosi. Just at this point, I'd also like to recognize Mr. William Geary, who's here this evening, who is here for as special counsel to the mayor for the downtown. So just want to recognize him for being here in the gallery. Anything further to?
I'll be more than happy to answer questions, and I know that there'll be more public meetings on this. Whatever you have questions now, I'll try to answer them, and I have experts with me to help me out.
Okay, we are going to have, I just want to let councils know, we are going to have a hearing on this, so, and this is for the purposes of putting this into committee, so just so we're mindful of that when we're speaking this evening. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman Tosi. Anyone wishing to speak at this point? Councilor Finn?
Again, I just want to be clear, I'd be happy to make a motion, Madam President, to refer this to the Downtown Economic Development Committee and also to schedule a public hearing. But specifically, in relation, Mr. Chairman Tosi, to the type of grant application. Is there anything required legislatively of us or of this body as it relates to this particular grant, or has this grant already been submitted?
No, there's no legislative action required to submit a grant, just like the $1 million grant that we received from the federal government. There is $500 million available.
Has this grant already been submitted?
The grant has already been submitted. Generally, Tiger grants are not approved on the first go-around. We've had our first go-around. They generally take 2 or 3 times before they actually get approved.
Now, the relationship, however, in order for the grant to be consistent with reality, is we do have to pass this amendment 3 at some point.
Not for the grant, but in order for us to include it in our downtown redevelopment plan through the meeting, the environmental process, it would save us quite a bit of time and money if it was included in the UIDP now.
Yeah, I just was interested because it notes around state and local planning that it's already part of the urban renewal district. I thought that's...
Well, right now, the MBTA station is not part of the UIDP.
Right.
And we'd like to get it included in the UIDP.
No, I understand that, but that's because we listed it in this grant we've already filed that it is.
Then that's a mistake.
And again, I do believe this is, again, very important, obviously, in terms of leveraging resources, and I really look forward to the discussion with the committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Finn. And Councilor LaForest.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to note that Quincy Center MBTA is actually in Ward 1. It's right on the border of Ward 1, 5. Person has City Hall, I have the Quincy Center MBTA in the Monroe Building. So I think people don't realize kind of where the boundaries are. And in the district, kind of being a surprise with such residential. But I just want some context. We have a timeline here in our packet. And if these documents been added to any of the city website, these online, planning department, for the ad hoc viewer, it looks like there's a link here to the planning department. So the ad hoc viewer wants to go online, drop down any of the planning department, and should be able to get the backup information we're looking at. Okay. I don't want to get into too much detail. I understand the hearing. I just want to get a little bit of context as far as timeline, what you're expecting from the public process. So you're in preliminary design.
That's correct.
And it looks like your design finalizes in third quarter, or Airline's preliminary design, third quarter 2017. So by no means is this project 100% designed done, built done. We're still in the homework phase as far as what's happening here. I think there's pieces of the puzzle that have been identified, but as far as the absolute details, what first jumped to my mind is there's been a lot of talk about bus routing to Bergen Parkway. You talk about traffic flow. So, okay, you're going to be on the 214, 216 route coming out of House Neck, Germantown. Now that bus is moving around, coming out to Bergen. Is that coming Dimmock? Is it coming through Granite? What are the logistics? So obviously this isn't something we're getting into tonight, but I guess I'm looking for just a little bit of context as to what the public should expect procedurally and timeline-wise with when will they be presented with the design, some things to that reference in here, community support, obviously the grant application.
Yes, it will not get to 100% design. We will procure using the design, build, operate, maintain, finance. So we will finish a preliminary design, we'll get it to about a 25% level.
Okay.
And then we'll put it out for an RFQ to hire the best concessionaire to give us the best value. That's how.
And what's the timeline for 25%?
So the timeline, could be shortened, depending on how the public process goes, and if there's, 100% consensus that this is the way to go, let's get moving on it, then we could possibly get it out as soon as the end of this calendar year.
Out to bid for
Out to bid.
project manager, coordinator, okay. And I guess just next up is then going to be a public hearing here at the City Council for people to provide their input.
We assume that the downtown committee will hold a public hearing on it, and we intend on having several public information meetings regarding it also,
Okay,
for the
so-
public to give in.
And I appreciate that, because I think there's one thing to come before the city council and kind of give testimony versus let's do the road show and explain to the residents in an informal setting and help them better understand what this is, versus we want you to go online, read our documents, come before us, give us your testimony. Very different from here's a PowerPoint, here's a presentation, here's what we are anticipating will be, here's it sounds like now, there's been discussion before about relocating the station. Now it sounds like the game plan's renovate existing, demolish current garage, renovate existing, expand the footprint. But as far as constituents wanting input relative, immediately after mine is parking capacity, referencing amount of space, when are we going to take that testimony from, geez, you're adding all these new uses, you're keeping saying parking capacity, we're at capacity, we want more convenient parking access to City Hall. Where's the public opportunity for that conversation?
Well, in the public informational meetings, I would assume that they will talk about that. We have data regarding the public parking use. That's roughly a 900-car parking garage. It was roughly 50% used by MBTA customers. Just before.
And so these public information meetings, we're looking to schedule this year, 6 months?
Yes, absolutely, as soon as possible. And I know that Mr. Walker is working to try and get some of those scheduled. He's going to be working with the council on that.
So it's 30 days, 60 days, I guess, for you, Jim, Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Through you, Madam President, to the council. Within the next 30 days, I think we'd like to have the first session. And while I'm speaking, I just like to be abundantly clear about something, that the URDP change is not an adoption of the plan to build a courthouse or anything specifically tied to the redevelopment of the Quincy Center T station. Whatever happens at the Quincy Center T station, it is the administration's belief that we need to have it within the URDP. So even if the plans change 100% between now and the time the public process is complete, it's important for us to have the T station in the URDP.
Is that like specific to the DIF?
No.
No. I think one thing too, for the automobile, too, the overlay and understanding what being in the URDP and what the design standards and what the documentation, supporting documentation, what that, what the URDP is versus here's a boundary. Within that boundary, there's certain, parameters of what the expectations are for those properties that were long vetted. And a lot of the talk focused on the LDA. There was that second document that came through that had a lot of homework, and that document still is and really adheres what's driving a lot of the development downtown today. So I just didn't know if it was specific to, because of the DIF project and paying in on a financial tie-in.
This is, through you again, this is more of a process piece of the equation. As you all know, a significant amount of work and money from the private developer at the time went into the permitting process for the original URDP with the private developer at that time. It's our belief if we could get the T station included into the URDP now, it wasn't included then, those permits that were very exhaustive will be allowed to continue forward with the T station included. That's the sense we're getting from the state at this time.
Mr. Walker, I truly appreciate you raising that as a point, because I don't think people realize, too, when we talk about street works in the city, one of the things that through the LTA we're looking to protect the city is that we're the owner of that document. They completed a lot of the permitting. The full NEPA process was completed for the entire downtown. And we've seen the Edgewater seawall, we're just going to repair an existing seawall. It took us 10 months to get through NEPA. So, slowing down the project failure to identify the NEPA project, and then here's where you're getting tied into permit. So I didn't understand, I guess I hadn't heard, I was thinking more so for the grant application, not understanding that we'd be able to then amend with the NEPA process and tie that in. What an opportunity, I really appreciate you clarifying that point. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Crowe, then we'll go to Councilor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I promise I'll be 3 minutes, so we can hit the stopwatch now. Frankly, we work together on other projects, so getting back to my comments that I made earlier to the chief, I think that, taking into consideration what Mr. Walker said, but I think that this is a creative approach and is actually a vision to potentially leverage outside agencies to solve a common problem. Because no matter where I go, it seems it could be a neighborhood meeting on something completely different. The status of the Quincy Center parking garage always comes up, so that's top of people's minds. I don't want to, I know this is going to committee, but I heard it mentioned briefly, and I'm a processor. So if you bring this into the URDP, technically, and maybe I'm incorrect, this would qualify for DIF financing, would it not?
I believe it would qualify for DIF financing. We're not seeking to use DIF financing because we procure using design build operate and finance and secure federal and state funding. In the same bond bill, there's $10 million in state funding that goes towards this project also. I don't believe we'll need DIF funding. We could use DIF funding for it, but I don't see it as being necessary. The MBTA station will still be owned and maintained, well, anyway, owned by the MBTA once we're all done.
We'll be collecting the revenue on the parking.
And hopefully we will be collecting the revenue on the parking. That's what we're trying to work out with the MBTA in the agreements. So they would own from the slab, the floor, the roof of the busway down, and we would offer to the concessionaire revenues from the parking garage to help pay for the project. That's part of how the financing would work on this. Also included in this type of financing would be the courthouse would be paying rent, as they do now, except they would be paying rent to the concessionaire on our behalf to help finance the project.
So that's what I mean, you're in a very unique position to potentially leverage outside entities to help subsidize the reality. So again, talking about creative vision thinking, not knowing outside of what I see in a couple of easels and what's in front of me, and I didn't read that Tiger grant application. We're early in the game, but it sounds like if done correctly, it could certainly, it's a novel idea. So I know we'll have plenty of time with that if you was item 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Liang, the chair of the downtown, just should probably call on you first because the motion was already made by Councilor Finn, but so we want to second it. So Councilor Liang.
Yes, I wanted to, through you, Madam President, I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to research and come up with what you think is the best proposal for the Quincy Center MBTA station. I think I can speak for all of my fellow councilors that this was an issue that has been brought to our attention many times over the past couple of years, and it's been a concern around all of the changes that are happening across our city. As you had mentioned earlier, Sarah, that this is the gateway to our city, and it's not just the parking garage and the lack of parking that's an issue, but it's also the lack of lighting, the issues that we find happen at the garage because of the lack of oversight and better retail stores or what have you in that area. So I think that this is a great first start, and I do commend the work that you guys are doing here. That being said, with the public's involvement so heavily involved in giving us feedback over the years, I think it's important that moving forward, we do put this into committee to make sure that they have feedback from the very beginning of this process as well. Again, I appreciate that this is very early on, but I'd like to make sure that the public is involved this early on with us as well. So I just want to make a motion to put this into the Downtown Economic Development Committee.
Okay, motion's made. Is there a second? Councilor Finn?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Second.
I thought it was an honor to defer it to our committee.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm happy to second.
All right, motion made and seconded. On the motion, Councilor Palmer.
Thank you. Frank, does the city of Quincy currently rent? Are we a landlord anywhere else? Are we in this business, or is this we venturing into new ground here? Something we've never done?
We would own, but the concessionaire would actually design, build, operate, maintain, and finance. So the agreement, the concessionaire agreement would be between the city and the concessionaire, and it would probably be a 30-year or 40-year agreement. In the agreement, it would state what condition it would have to be at the end of that 30 or 40 years.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that. We'll get into the details. I'm just wondering, do we do this already? Are we currently engaged?
No.
So this is the first time we're venturing into this realm of we're the landlord in this concessionaire contract that we're going to be putting out there,
It's
right?
probably the first time any city in the Commonwealth has done this.
Okay, fair enough. So there isn't necessarily a time frame, a hard time frame that this needs to be passed by in order to qualify for, some sort of matching funding at a different governmental level?
No, there's two things here that we're talking about. One being the bringing this.
I'm only talking about the URDP.
So bringing it into the URDP is probably the easiest thing to do. The harder thing, which would take longer, would be the public process in shaping the project.
Sure.
So once it's in the URDP, then we can begin to shape.
I'm asking about the URDP. Is there a hard time frame for the URDP that this needs to be passed?
I believe the URDP approval should be as soon as possible, only because what we have received from EOEEA, the certificate for the downtown development, has been a number of years now, and we don't want it to be too old because then we'll be forced to redo it in the future. So what I said was this will save us a lot of time and money by including it in there now, because we know the overall development, the density will still be under what Streetworks had originally anticipated. So it's an easy thing to do with the meter unit at this time.
Okay, no, I understand that. And the reason why I asked that question is because it's been 9 months since the administration has prompted a discussion about the URDP and amending the URDP. And I'm wondering, the sense I'm getting is that you guys want us to hurry up and, put this into the URDP, pass an amendment number 3, so that you guys can move on with the planning that needs to happen, and I can appreciate that. But from my perspective, the last time we had a conversation about this was 9 months, and I believe we left that meeting with Mr. Hines saying he was going to get back to us with some revisions and some follow-up. It's been 9 months. You're standing before me tonight saying, well, you guys got to hurry up and pass this because we need to get things going.
No, the amendment that was put before you then is different from what you're seeing and what we're looking for.
That's right, because it literally expired at the end of our term, as Mr. Fancy says.
Right, it expired.
Right, because it took so long for that process to be completed.
Well, I think it was being redeveloped also, so reconstituted, if you will.
And fair enough, and I can appreciate that things change, and, this is a moving target that the administration is working on. One thing, though, and this is the last comment I'll make, that I'm a little bit concerned about is that on Monday, June 22nd, 2015, we had a meeting of the Downtown Economic Growth Committee where the body unanimously passed an amendment to the previous amendment number 3 of the URDP. And I don't see that language reflected in what's proposed now. So it's almost as if 9 months ago, you guys brought this forward to us because you wanted to make some amendments, some changes. We added something else. We said, okay, we want these covenants to be reviewed in a public process by the planning department. And I understand that they have that sense, but there's nothing that requires it under the URDP. We took a unanimous vote in that committee, did it. We were waiting to finalize the URDP to pass the amendment. Nothing happens for 9 months. Now there's another supplement to the URDP, and we're asked to ignore all the work that we did 9 months ago. That's troubling to me. And what I'd like to do, perhaps under communications, is put the meeting minutes from that June 22nd, 2015 meeting and refer them to the Downtown and Economic Growth Committee so that there is that basis. So we're not, essentially my issue here is we're reinventing the wheel. We've done some work on the URDP. I'd like to see the work that the body has done with the administration and public hearings. I'd like to see that incorporated. If we're going to change the URDP, let's incorporate everything that we've done over the past 9 months, 2 years.
Councilor, and that will be in URDP 4, which is currently being worked on now.
Well, quite frankly, it's up to whatever this committee wants to be in the URDP to put in the URDP.
The URDP 4 proposal will be before you in the near future.
Right, the near future. That's the issue I have, because we were told we were going to get the changes to the URDP 3 9 months ago in the near future. It's 9 months. Now we've taken that off the block, putting something else on the block, and you're saying, just hurry up and pass this one so we can get to work on things. So we can talk about this in committee. I just wanted to raise that to make sure that it was noted for the record. Certainly, we'll be having these conversations, I suspect, in committee. And thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Council Calhoun. And just a point of clarification, I think Mr. Walker, just want to, no, you don't want to make my clarification, no. Okay, alrighty then. Very well. Having previously not been heard, Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be quick here. I'm on the other side of the coin here. I want to speed up the process. Let's get this done. Bottom line is you are DP. If we work outside, there's so many moving parts to this situation. I'm glad the administration, Mr. Patsy's, Mr. Walker, Frank, the whole team is moving forward with this, because if that garage somehow just demolishes and goes down, does this speed up any more process? I mean, we talked about 30 days. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, haven't we?
If that garage falls down and there's an emergency and it comes down, you may not have a garage replaced. We can get a replacement garage if we go through this process I'm talking about.
Because this is the integral part. You're talking about putting in this,
Yes,
I mean, this is probably the most important part. I mean, for me, and we'll get more into the discussion when we get into it. Instead of going to Quincy Center T Station, I'd rather go down to Wallaston. And Wallaston's under, going to be in the 60% design phase. They're going to redo that station over there, and because they don't have handicap accessibility. But this one's the most important part of all of our 4 stations.
This is definitely the most important. It's the only one near rail stop also.
So, regardless of what we're trying to do here I'd like to speed up the process, get it to where we need to get to. Forget about put that into consideration at June 22nd, 2015. We had this, but I'm glad for the administration to move forward with the ball here, because this needs to be addressed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Devon. Councilor Finn.
I would also appreciate if this specifically could be sent to the council's legal counsel, Mr. Shea. And I want to stress the importance of what Councilor Palmucci is saying, is that it is absolutely critical that we get back to condensing and understanding the overall URDP, because that is what is guiding everything as we move forward downtown. Understand this is a precondition in order to include this into that, but at the same point in time, there's some very critical issues that still need to be resolved in relation to that. I think that's the point that's being made, and I hope that we can get that back on track quickly as well. But again, I think it would be helpful if this were, again, forwarded as well to Mr. Shea. And also, we need notices of public hearings, of the meetings of the downtown committee should be referred to them as well.
Thank you. Councilor, I believe Mr. Shea does have a copy of this and has been informed of these events this evening. So,
The other thing as well is I do hope the administration will update us soon. We've hit Wallaston and we've hit Quincy, but we also know that there was an RFP that MBTA has reviewed on North Quincy. And I know that that's raising some concern and some issues, and I'm hoping at some point we'll get some feedback.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor King, having not been heard.
It might be worth noting, though, that Wallaston T Station, which is in dire straits to be redone, it's not been, ADA compliance is not yet at a phase to be constructed. It's still in design phase, no funding available yet. This seems to be the most furthest, at least at an advanced point of construction that we have.
Thank you. Briefly, just for the record, there's no other side of the coin here, Counselor. I don't appreciate the implication that somehow I don't want to get this done. I want to get it done. I want to get it done right. If there's a choice between speed and quality, I think quality should be what we seek downtown. I've been through this process a number of years with the LDA, This document right here is what governs the development downtown. This is our opportunity to set the policy for how downtown will be developed. So I don't want to put out of our heads what happened on June 22nd, 2015, because that was a very important policy discussion that this body had with the cooperation of the administration. And it will continue to be an important policy discussion that we have for the future of what our downtown will be. So I also want to get this done. I just want to make sure I get it done right, that we get it done right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Palmucci. Any further questions? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, we will get back to scheduling the committee meetings at the end of close the meeting, just close the meeting. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item, Madam Chairman, Madam President, number 4 on the agenda. Upon the recommendation of Commissioner of Public Works, the approval is on the mayor. Following sum be appropriated. The sum of $715,000. Sewer Department contractual within the Department of Public Works for the following work. $715,000 for the sewer system, replacement on Newberry Ave. Charge to sewer enterprise.
Councilor.
The commissioner is here this evening.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening about 5 important public works projects. I'll break them down into 2 different localities. As the city clerk mentioned, the first relates to the north side of the city, North Quincy High School campus, Teal Field. As you know, that is not a public works project. That is more of a park forestry project being managed by Chris Casani and some others. But as you know, we work very closely with Woodard and Curran and other engineers that are working as well on these projects. So we'd like to talk to you about some improvements that we feel need to be made on that area with respect to the water main. And also on Newbury Avenue, as time went on, we realized that we needed to do some work on the sewer system and the drainage system on Newbury Avenue. 2 other areas, one, the placement or the replacement of some displaced stone, granite wall items that are fallen in from the town brook along McGrath Highway. Those of you who are familiar with that area, it's from Washington Street to the back end of Elm. It's part of the Ward 1 community, and that is a significant flood control project that we've added to this list. In addition, the last one is a pump station on Broad Street. Back in 2014, in the aftermath of excuse me, a lot of the construction in this area, there was a recommendation by the engineering firm to add a permanent bypass pumping station on Broad Street. That actually went out to bid. Western Sampson was the winning bidder. And because of lack of funding, we were not able to award that particular bid. So that's a long-standing, existing issue. When we have a tide surge, or as waters come up and the tide gate goes under, we physically have to bring over a 6-inch pump in order to accommodate and relieve flooding along that area. So what this will allow us to do is to have a permanent mini pump station located at that site, and then we can move that transitional piece to other sections, whether it be West Quincy, House Neck, or other sections within the city of Quincy. It's very similar to what we did on Spence Avenue. As those folks on Spence Ave battle flood control measures, as Council Cole well knows. We worked with the state, local governments to model some funds together, and we now have a permanent fix. And we've had a lot of rain over the past couple of cycles, and we have had no reports as to any flooding issues there. We used to allocate at least 2 major pumps to that community. Now we can move those pumps to other sections. So with respect to the, and I will be brief and answer any questions that you may have. With respect to the water main replacement on Hunt Street, this was an area that became more important to us as Public Works. Again, it's not a Public Works project, but we appreciate the cooperation with the Mayor's Office and the Park Department to allow us to, in a sense, piggyback on this project. As you know, last fall, I believe 3 telephone poles came down on Hunt Street. Obviously, a significant public safety concern for the mayor and for National Grid. That really transformed that project to now to be inclusive of excavation on Hunt Street. So that opened up the opportunity, if we're going to be efficient, to maybe look at the water main. We knew the water main was an old water main in that area, and we believe that with the excavation already being taken place because of the National Grid work, we might as well accompany that with work to replace the water main. Similar sewer drain on Newbury. With investigation, we realized that the sewer had sagged, had somewhat collapsed. That affects the integrity of that sewer line, and as well as the drainage. All these funds, as you can see, the $436,000 for the water main will come out of the water free cash account. That's funds that has been certified by the Department of Revenue as free cash in water for the fiscal year that we're in. That requires an act of the council, approval of the mayor, and act of the council in order to appropriate that money. So this is a legitimate water project. It's a legitimate water resource financing. It will not affect water rates. It will not affect sewer rates. Same with the sewer amount of $715,000. That will come out of the sewer enterprise account. We have been certified by the Mass Department of Revenue for sewer enterprise. I don't know if the auditor has those numbers, $2 million plus, and the water enterprise, $1.6 million. So there are ample funds in our free cash, both in water and sewer, to accommodate all of these important projects. The drainage projects on Newbury, as you know, we have a sewer rehab fund that if the council approves these items, after that approval, there will remain in that fund about $1.8 million is my understanding. This is not a static account, as you know. We are graced with a significant amount of development across our city. These developers need to pay 1% of their construction costs into this fund. So the good news is there will be an infusion of new cash into this fund, hopefully each and every month as we progress through the construction cycle. And this is important work on Newbury. The Elm Street project, again, that's a project that's been part of our capital improvement plan for many, many years. That's $889,000. That will also come from the sewer rehab. And of course, the Broad Street tie gate will prevent flooding in that community and allow us to mobilize our existing pieces into other communities. So it's a recommendation of the department. We'd like to move forward on these important infrastructure improvements. We appreciate your support. Thank you for answering questions that we may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Councilor Crum.
Good evening, Commissioner. Always a pleasure. And one of my thoughts, especially to some new folks to the council, was to explain, just in terms of like process flows. So the first two being charged to free cash, and the second one coming from the enterprise fund. As a newer council, those are sort of like foreign concepts. But I was going to defer to the auditor, but I think he did a pretty good job. I sat up there for quite some time.
It's important to know for the new councils that the mayor cannot spend this money without council approval. I cannot spend this money without council approval. So it requires a vote to go somewhere, either to stabilization and to go out to somewhere else to appropriation. So for those of you who've been around, you know that usually at the end of the year or sometime during the year, we'll move all of that money perhaps into stabilization. And then on occasion, if we have projects like this, we'll ask you for another vote to take it out of stabilization into sewer, contractual sewer professional services, something like that.
So
We bypassed the system here. We were going directly into the construction phase, taking it from free cash right into the account.
There's also a PDF that was sent out to the body prior to the meeting that just kind of broke down order by order, appropriation by appropriation, with year-to-date balances. So hopefully that kind of gave you some perspective as we see in terms of process flow and how this stuff works. And myself, as a ward counselor, I know that some of the other folks that come out there, drainage, projects that are actually solving that issue. And neighborhood goes a long way.
There are things that we do, as you know, from not putting sand down in the winter if we can avoid it. That does not overcapacitize our drainage system. We have a systematic approach to clean our drainage system for the first time probably ever. We have over 10,000 of these structures, and we're on a system to at least clean them at least once every 3 years on a cycle, using both private as well as public resources. So operationally, we're doing what we can to maintain that ponding effect on roadways that we all see, where you no longer see plants growing out of catch basins and grass growing out of catch basins. If you do, let me know. That should not be the case. But we also need to focus on the major infrastructure improvement, because operationally, that's not enough. We have a very old system, very old city. We need to continue to be mindful of the fact that we have an old sewer system, old drainage system, old water main system. And that's why periodically we'll be coming before you for either I&I work to take infiltration out of our sewer system that reduces our sewer bills, to maintain our water mains so that not only are we promoting clean water through our system, but avoiding leaks that we all pay for, and of course, put that drain system as well. So it's a holistic approach to not create more of a problem by not putting sand down, clean up operation, what we can do, so less funding on the road. Our system works to the extent that it can, so we clean up our outfalls, we clean up our drainage system. And this is an important piece. Now, we understand that no ratepayer, no taxpayer can afford the true cost of doing everything all at once. We didn't have the time, first of all, nor would we have the money. My philosophy has always been we don't allow the enormity of the task to paralyze us in the present. So right now, these are the projects that we've identified that we need to move forward for all these reasons, to avoid some pretty horrific events. And it's time. These roads, some of these roads, as I mentioned, Newbury is going to be impacted. Hunt Street is going to be impacted. Good time to go in and do our work as well. So it's an opportunity for us to show that departments do work together on projects, even though we are not the lead department. Appreciate the mayor's help in moving this forward, because obviously without his support, I wouldn't be here. And appreciate your consideration and considering it this evening, and if you can, we'd appreciate it most we can get. We only have 4 or 5 months of construction season. I'd like to get all this paperwork done in advance of that, so we can get these contracts signed and get the work done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilor Ford.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner, I actually drove by the Hunt Street project just last week. They did a presentation as especially we were talking about the public investment, it's a private investment. The project's gone through planning board. Being in my district, it did come through Affordable Housing Trust. So I drove by to see, where that's going to be going. What an improvement to that entire neighborhood that's being made. Typically, most of the flood projects are in Ward 1. We do have 2 reference. So one, I know when we funded the capital improvement project, the Russell Park area and that, the Broad Street and that, the watershed leading into the town river, was an area of concern, chronic flooding. And so this, we did the tie gate repairs, and Weston and Sampson have been the lead on our tie gate management. They do a great job giving us our reports. As in their operational management, this is now installing permanent pump station at that location. So this is an area that was long neglected, chronic flooding. I think he's took out, 40 tons or something of sediment from the catch basins in that area. Really, this kind of brings that next level. So I'm very pleased to see it being funded. One concern I have is the bids you have were from March of 2014, so we're 2 years out basically on bids. And I'm curious if those rates are being honored, and then it's a 90-day, substantially completed, 120-day completion. What timeline, when should we anticipate, what's the work timeline?
The good news is Weston Sampson is holding on to those delivery rates. I required that today, and even
Yeah.
though that bid is a 2 or 3 year-old bid, that was back in March of 2014. Weston Sampson is an engineering firm that we use quite regularly within the city. And to show the range why it's important, we feel, to capture this project right now, they were the low bidder at $189,750. The high bidder was $275,000. So if we went out to bid today, who knows what that number would be. To its credit, Weston Sampson has told us today that they're going to honor that particular bid. The reason why the number is higher, you don't bid for electric utility modifications, police details. They have some bond costs that we need to compensate them for, and some utility coordination and so forth. So the actual number that we're requesting includes the existing bid of $189,750, electric utility modifications of $64,800, construction oversight utility coordination of $30,000, police details of $27,000, bond costs of $5,000 to secure the bond, contingencies, which is always part of these projects, $13,450 for total, excuse me, number of $330,000.
Great, and that is the timeline for a project to begin?
These are permitting issues, so that's why the sooner we get the funding, so we can get going. But permitting issues.
Initial filing?
I'm not sure. Whatever. But it's a project that we.
Who, I guess, who just offline should be following up with specific to that project to make sure the neighbors know?
Joe Shea, Wood and Curran,
Okay.
get that information.
Great. Secondly, the Town Brook project that's being funded is the lower section of the Town Brook, the Elm Street, Bracken Street area. And one thing that, as we were doing the permitting for the relocation of the Town Brook and the encouragement from the environmental activists in our city to encourage more daylighting, we have a very substantial area that is daylit downstream, and that's the specific area. And I think part of my discussion is that's the section, obviously, Ward 1. And part of the discussion for me was, geez, what about the current conditions of existing? So I was thrilled to see that some attention is going to be paid to that area. I do know that that's considered an ACEC, right, area of critical environmental concern, drives your timeline. People say, geez, we want to get in there, clean agreement, Quincy, we want to do a cleanup in May, you can't get in at that time because of fish spawning, so, because they don't want access.
There needs to be a sensitive permitting issue as well.
Right. So same thing where it stays here because hardly it's going to get funded in permit.
Now keep in mind, this site, as you know, is a stone's throw from the downtown. You have the Galvin project is coming up with the old IHOP was. You have the beautiful condominium project right across the street. You have the other Galvin project right on Elm in your district. And it's a major gateway into the downtown, out of the downtown. This site is deplorable, to say the least. It's deplorable. It's privately owned, let alone the environmental issues of these blocks being placed in the brook, causing capacity issues and proper flow issues and so forth. But we need to have a maintenance agreement with the owner because this is too pristine, gorgeous area to be used in the way that it's being abused. So I agree with you. There's a lot of work that we need to do. So part of this project will be to have a long-term, hopefully long-term maintenance agreement that either we will come in and do it or the property owner will do it. But it needs to be restored to the beautiful site that it can be.
And I think, obviously aesthetically, it was, a little rough and fertilized and in the edges, we want to get trees back there. It's definitely some time and some attention. But also what it does for our fishing industry, right? So where's the smells swimming up the river and spawning? What we're going to have for fishing season. These areas not being careful, people not realizing, what the habitat is and what it provides for the life cycle in our ecology. So I think these are terrific projects, and I appreciate having some capital improvement plan. Next steps are identified, now next steps are getting cared for. And thank you for the backup to the difference in the bid prices. I think it's important for us to be seeing what the cost could have been and how the value that we're getting. So thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Forrest. Anything further? Is there a motion? Motion approved? Okay, passed. Motion, second? Okay, motion made second. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe.
Yes.
Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFarge.
Yes.
Counsel Yang.
Yes.
Counsel Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members, the order passes. The second part of the Commissioners in the Mayor's order is $436,000 Water Department contractual within the Water Department of Public Works. Water main and service replacement on Elm Street. 053.
All right, is there a motion? Motion made and seconded by Councilor Crowe on the motion. All right, Mr. Clerk, you call the roll.
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe.
Yes.
Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFarge.
Yes.
Counsel Yang.
Yes.
Counsel Calmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
7 members. In the third and final portion, $1,719,000 Town Brook between Elm and Washington, Broad Street at Town River, and again, a piece of Hunt, Kenwood, and Newberry.
All right.
$1,719,000.
All right, motion approved by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Forrest on the motion. All right, Mr. Clerk, you call the roll.
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe.
Yes.
Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFarge.
Yes.
Counsel Yang.
Yes.
Counsel Calmucci. President Hughes.
Yes.
7 members, all 3 orders are
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item on the agenda is Council Order 2016-036, introduced at the last meeting, $170,000 for outside council approval for zoning appeal, pending in the finance committee.
All right, Councilor Kroll.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously here before us, I'm not so sure how something could be pending in the finance committee, but be on the agenda. But
Councilor Kroll says.
I think it's a point of order. I believe it's
Point of order.
just before us this evening.
This is what was before us this evening. I think it was before us in finance at the last, or was put into
Put in the committee at the
and
last
then
meeting.
brought out and put onto the agenda.
I don't know, from a sequential standpoint, we could that out at the end of the meeting. But I mean, I'm fine with it either way. I'm just trying to, I think, learn procedurally.
Sure, the clerk would like to address that.
That is correct. When it comes to the council and it goes on the calendar, it can be taken out at any subsequent meeting, usually after a meeting or after discussion, after advertising. The point at the last agenda meeting, we decided and it was said to put them on. Sometimes we put them on, but we don't have. I don't want to.
Okay.
I want to be clear. You can bring anything out of this calendar if it's ready to go. And any finance order is ready to go if the chairman is ready to go. We would go this one.
At the end of this year, this evening, present to the chairman?
We would not allow it, whatever season.
I mean, no, I'm fine with it, just, I guess, trying to learn.
No, I think that my recollection is that we did decide to put them on this evening's agenda because we did not have time to do a finance committee meeting because of the oversight committee meeting before the meeting this evening. Oh, all right, great. Thank you. As long as we're all good. Good evening, Attorney Patkin. How are you?
Thank you.
Good. Council Kroll, did you want to ask
I really did, I mean, I don't know if
Ms.
you
Patkin?
want to walk us through, I think.
Sure, I can. I'm sure you all have the memo that City Solicitor Timmons wrote. Essentially, this is a case that was a suit against the city and the Conservation Commission. It's incorrectly noted that it's a zoning case. It's actually a Concom case. That's just a scrivener's error. But it was a suit against the city and the Conservation Commission, and then the individual members of the Conservation Commission and some other city employees in their individual capacities, as well as against former Mayor McCauley and a former assistant city solicitor in their individual capacities. So the suit proceeded forward just against the individuals after the city and the Conservation Commission were released from the case on what's called summary judgment. And the city did have to hire outside counsel to represent former Mayor McCauley as well as the former city solicitor, just to avoid any conflicts. And because of that, the need to retain two outside attorneys, we have these bills that have resulted.
Thank you. Thank you. Second. Motion. Councilor Crowell, did you have a motion?
Basically, just to sum it up, we have an outstanding bill that we need to pay.
Exactly.
Quite honestly, right? So, it's how much you do there, such pay your bills.
Correct.
So, passage.
All right, motion been made, seconded by Councilor LaForest. Did you want to speak on the motion? Okay, seconded by Councilor LaForest on the motion.
Very quick, this is a long-standing legal battle along Manor Ave. It's an area that's sort of buried off. The case has been tied up in court for a long time. So this is a resolution, so I appreciate that. Outside counsel, I understand. It just, my question, do we have any other outstanding legal bills? I know the chief was here earlier. I know there was a case we had outside counsel. Do we have any other outstanding legal bills that we should be reviewing?
I can't answer that. I'm not privy to them. It doesn't mean that we do or we don't have them. It's just not something I'm prepared to
I
discuss.
think sometimes we see in the news as to how these cases are, and it's just curious when you're, paying one such as selling bills, where are the other ones outstanding? I'll follow up with Solicitor Timmons in regards, but with that, so.
Thank you, Councilor Price. Councilor Calhoun.
Thank you. Through you, perhaps to the auditor, what's the current standing of this, the current balance or position of this fund, the outside counsel fund?
Due to Councilor the balance, there was actually no available balance in this particular account right now. They've expended all their money. There was $95,000 budgeted in fiscal 16. There was some prior year encumbrances transferred in, which brought the revised budget to $202,000. To date, we've spent $168,582, and we still have open encumbrances of $33,426.
So it's, the encumbrances aren't negative, that's just a claim on the cash.
That's
in the account,
correct.
right? So the current balance is zero in that account?
Correct.
And that account is the personal service / outside counsel?
It's not personal service, it's under an expenditure account in the law office, and it's a legal expenditure outside counsel.
All right, so is that different than the, did you see this memo from?
Yeah, actually, I looked at the memo, and the account that they're referencing, and they're saying personal service outside counsel account, and the account number that is referenced, the first part of the account number is incorrect. I have an account number that should read 01-15154. The number that was referenced was actually from the judgment's account. However, the second part of the number is not part of the judgment's account. So I'm assuming that you want this to go into the outside counsel account, which is a legal expenditure.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, so there's a mishmash of two different account numbers.
Correct.
Okay, and so for the judgment account number, is there a balance in that account?
That account, I believe, is in a deficit right now. If you can just give me 1 minute.
Is that to the tune of
Okay. The judgments account is actually in a deficit this year of $224,169.80.
So the two accounts that are referenced in this February 1st memo from the solicitor to the mayor that was provided to us as backup as to why we should approve this this expenditure references two different accounts, is some sort of mishmash of one, so it's referring to one or the other. The judgments account is, one of the two accounts is negative $200,000 and the other account is zero.
Correct.
Okay. So either to Ms. Petkin or to the mayor's representative, how is it that we're going to pay out of that account this money? We'll take it into, can we take it negative, Madam Auditor?
The account that this $170,000 that will be, where it will be deposited into or registered into, that account would then have, you'd have the $170,000 which you could then spend. The judgments account, they're two separate accounts.
I know the judgments account, I think, is one of the two accounts we can run negative.
The
But the
judgment-
personal services outside contract account.
Okay, so then you would have, in the law office, I would just have to look, they would have a outside counsel personal service account, which would be a payroll account. I don't believe this is where they want to pay this, they want to pay this through payroll.
So to either Ms. Petkin or Mr. Walker, can someone tell me which account this money's going to come from and what the balance of that account is? Mr. Walker or Ms. Petkin, I don't know who's ever more.
Okay, Mr. Walker.
Through you, Madam President, my sense is the appropriation would go into the solicitor's office line for not the personal services, but the account that the auditor referenced. It would not go to judgments.
So essentially, we just take it straight out of free cash and it flow right into the personal services.
That's my...
Non-personal services.
Correct.
Not personal.
Into outside accounts.
Into outside accounts. Okay, I'm looking at this memo dated February 1st. It says to the personal service / outside counsel account, which then apparently has a wrong account number on it. So I'm just trying to clarify. It's $175,000 taxpayer money. And I think we should know what account it's going into. So which account is it, Mr. Walker?
It is the account referenced by the auditor, the contractual solicitor's account for outside counsel. And perhaps it's not explicitly contractual, but it is the line for outside counsel.
Okay.
I actually think that it was probably a typographical error on the attached memo, because if you do read the actual counsel order, it's stating that it's a payment of legal fees associated with the defense. So therefore, I'm assuming that per that wording, it will go into that particular account for legal expenditures outside counsel, which...
Yes, and it is specified in the second line, city solicitor's office, outside counsel, for the payment of legal fees. And the last sentence is to be appropriated to free cash. So if there was a mix-up on the account numbers, it's to go into the outside counsel account.
And through to the Madam President, to the auditor, that would be the same account that this body in the last session unanimously had requested the mayor to make funds available for the council's use to hire an outside counsel that's gone unresponded to, right? That's the same account?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And to you, Ms. Petkin, the reason why we hired outside counsel is because there was a difference between people being sued, the city being sued, and individuals being sued in their individual capacity who also held positions in the city at the time, correct?
The reason for the outside counsel is to avoid any possible conflict. So we continue to represent the individual members of the Conservation Commission, as well as the 3 city employees who were not members of the Conservation Commission, but were also sued in their individual capacities. So everyone was sued individually as well as in their official capacities, but because of the position of former Mayor McCauley and the former Assistant City Solicitor, it would have been, we felt we might run into conflicts in representing all of there were, I believe, 9 defendants altogether, 9 individual defendants. So because of that, we hired 2 attorneys to represent.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to get to what the conflict was. It was the difference between, it's because they were being sued personally.
Well, all of the individuals were also being sued individually and their official capacities.
Okay.
But the issue was, depending on how the defense would go, there was the possibility, as you know, of some people saying it wasn't me, it was him. Right, right. And because of that, we could not ethically take on the representation of all the parties.
So I believe in your initial presentation, I heard you say that summary judgment was granted against the city defendants. So at that point, wouldn't have the conflict have been
No, it was
resolved?
not against the city defendants, it was against the city itself and the Conservation Commission itself. And on summary judgment, the court ruled that because there was no official policy involved under civil rights statutes, which is probably getting way too much details
No,
that
that's fine.
people want.
You've answered my question, and you've answered my
Okay.
question. So
All right, so
we
that's
can carry
why the
on.
officials were out, but not the individuals in their official capacity.
And then just lastly, I'm being sued in both my professional and my personal capacity in 2 lawsuits that are currently pending. One, the CMART lawsuit, and 2, Mr. Harris's entitlement lawsuit to the Ward 6 seat, right? Those are both, that's the same kind of situation, we're being sued personally and professionally.
To be honest, I haven't been involved in either one of those, so I can't answer any questions relating to them, especially where they're pending litigation. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment.
Okay. Publicly? It wouldn't be appropriate for you to comment publicly? I mean, I'm being sued. Certainly,
Oh, yeah,
you can
and
tell me
of
what the
course-
status of the lawsuit is if I
Right.
would ask, because I'm the one.
Right, but I
being sued.
can't comment in a public forum
Right.
on
Oh,
ongoing
okay. I
litigation,
understand.
but certainly if you have questions, Mr. Timmons would be available. They're not suits I've worked on personally.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. So there is a motion. It's been made and seconded. Mr. Clerk, can call the roll.
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe. Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFleur.
Yes.
Counsel Leeang.
No.
Counsel Palmucci.
President.
Counsel Hughes.
Yes.
Can we also
6.
just include on that, to make sure that our number is properly updated, reflects
Great, thank you. Mr.
Thank
Clerk,
you.
next item, thank you.
Next item also pending in the Finance Committee, Council on 2016-037, appropriation of $65,000 for election costs for presidential election and special election on Ward 6. The breakdown is on you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Shea. Counsel Crowe?
Mr. Chair, do you have any commentary around that, or it's?
Great, Colonel.
Yeah. Through you, Madam President, to the council, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items I've listed out are results of the special Ward 6 election and a little bit spillover from another money this year's budget for the presidential. Most of it is for equipment. The equipment is reprogramming the machines. The other amounts are fairly small, and I may not use them, and I do have a history. This department has a history of returning whatever money is left over at the end of the year, which hopefully we'll be able to do in June, but I do need this to get through. And I might mention that the ballots are out today for the presidential election. And today was the last day to file for the Ward 6 election for the candidates, and we're going to be expending some funds immediately on that special election also.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shea. There's no motion? All right, motion approved, seconded by Councilor Palmucci, and on the motion.
I just wanted to know, are we having a Ward 6 special election? Does anyone know the status of that lawsuit?
You would know you're being sued
I don't know.
personally and professionally.
Yeah,
So-
I haven't been told. Mrs. Shea, do you know the status of that? What's going on?
Have you heard? Yes.
I have had nothing. I had some conversations with the law department almost every day. If they've heard anything, I've been on communication, so I've been told to go forward and we're going forward.
Is there a cutoff date before we lose money between when this could go and when we're wasting money by?
Today is the last day for the candidates to submit papers. We have 2 weeks to certify them. It's not going to take 2 weeks, but the calendar calls for 2 weeks. To be honest with you, they're probably certified. They're probably done this evening. We have held a few people over because the queue was full with newly registered voters also for the presidential. So I'll be going to the printer March 2nd.
Mr. Walker, do you know the status? Is there anything happening with that, for that zip that we should be aware of? you know?
No, sir.
I mean, the burden,
Do you say
I
no
don't
say?
believe is on
No,
the
sir.
city.
Burden's on him, you're saying, Joe, essentially, Mr. Shea, burden's on him to move the case off. Hopefully he doesn't do it 2 weeks before, they don't do it 2 weeks before the election and waste a lot of taxpayer money. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Motion's made, seconded by Counselor Palmucci. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, Counselor Devon, sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam President. Clerk Shea, what is the amount just for the presidential election, just for that one? I know you have a breakdown here for this.
Well, I went over all my accounts which are listed here. The big discrepancy was in the programming of the equipment for the presidential. We have to program 31 machines. And then we have to program 6 for Ward 5, so it's 37 machines. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. The ballots that you have to pay for are predetermined costs. We have a sole source ballot company for our city election. The state ballots come from Secretary Galvin. Communication, when you have to advertise an election, even one ward gets the same amount of newspaper ads, and we advertise in the bilingual and the Chinese papers, and the posters you have to print. So the communication takes care of it. The regular election is about 80,000. I'm not asking, I have some left over. I have anticipated the presidential. The rest, 20,000 of this is for Ward 6, the remainder is for the presidential. But again, if I don't use it, I will.
Are you going to be here for both elections?
I'm certainly going to be here for the presidential primary. I'm not positive about it. Maybe for April 3rd primary and Ward 6.
Good.
I'm sure the staff can handle it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Devon. All righty then. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Kane.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Councilor DeBon.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor LaFarge.
Yes.
Councilor Liang.
Yes.
Councilor Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members.
Next item.
Next item is a gift. Be it ordained the city of Quincy accept the following gift upon the conditions attached and herein set forth.
Wait, reading with approval.
Okay.
$800 for the DARE program.
All right. Motion approved, seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call.
Councilor Kane.
Yes.
Councilor Crowe. Yes. Councilor DeBon.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor LaFarge.
Yes.
Councilor Yang.
Yes.
Councilor Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members, the order of the. I have 2 resolves, both from Council Palmucci. The first one is resolved in support of Massachusetts House Bill 2870, enact relative to protecting consumers
Okay.
of gas and electric.
Councilor Palmucci.
Yes, I don't know if my colleagues have had an opportunity to take a look at this. It's a pretty interesting bill pending in, I'm channeling my inner Kevin Coughlin here. But it's an interesting bill pending in the House relative to protecting consumers of electricity and gas from paying for leaked and unaccounted for gas. So currently there's Quincy's like really high on the list of places with the most unaddressed gas leaks from National Grid. So not only does that have an effect where it kills city trees and cause pollutants to be in the air, but also the utility companies are allowed to pass on that cost of all the gas that's leaking that they don't repair on to consumers. So this is a bill that's pending in the House that would simply say you can't pass that cost on to consumers. You will fix the leaks or you pay for the amount of gas that's out. I would like to vote on this, but I don't know if my colleagues are willing to do so. I would ask that we approve this and we send that resolution in support of the bill to our delegation at the State House.
Second.
Okay, motion approved. Made, seconded. On the motion. You can call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe. Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFarge.
Yes.
Counsel Liang.
Yes.
Counsel Calhoun. President Hughes. 8 members.
Thank you.
Next up.
Next order.
Council Calhoun, resolution to support a House Bill 2871, an act relative to gas leak repairs during road projects. There are some other.
Wait, reading. Thank you. And can I go on the record as supporting my resolution about last? This, again, my inner Kevin Coughlin. Interesting bill pending in the House relative to gas leak repairs, which essentially says that all gas leaks need to be repaired within 12 months of the date the leak was classified, and would essentially say anytime they open up a roadway, they can't ignore the gas leak that needs to be repaired in that street. It would require the utility to make the repairs to that gas line while they have the street open. Sounds like common sense, but as my experience on the council has shown me in the past 6 years, you can't always apply common sense when you're dealing with the public utilities. So again, if my colleagues are willing, I'd ask that we vote on this tonight and send it to the delegation indicating our resolution in support of House Bill 2871.
Motion by Counsel Calhoun, seconded by Counsel Finn. On the motion, Mr. Clerk?
Counsel Kane.
Yes.
Counsel Crowe.
Yes.
Counsel DeBon.
Yes.
Counsel Finn.
Yes.
Counsel LaFleur.
Yes.
Counsel Liang.
Yes.
Counsel Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
That will be sent. 8 members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel Calhoun, for those. All right, next we will move to the approval of previous meeting minutes from the January 19th meeting. All those in favor? All those against? All right, the ayes have it. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Mr. Clark, are there any?
I have 5 communications. The first one, these 4 are from the traffic department. Council Crowe, add stop signs northbound and southbound on Thompson Street intersecting with Farm.
Refer to ordinance and advertise.
Next one from Council Kane, remove handicap parking sign at 113 Safford Street.
All right, refer to ordinance and advertise.
Next one, Council Finn, add a handicap parking space at 36 Bay State Road.
Refer to ordinance and advertise.
And the last one is from Council Finn, remove a handicap parking sign at 63 Appleton Street.
Refer to ordinance and advertise. Any
I
unfinished
have
business?
one more communication from National Grid. Enclosed piece find a petition from National Grid covering the installation of underground facilities. This underground facility is at the corner of it's at 1363 Hancock Street at the corner of Cliveden Street to install 4 4-inch conduit concrete encased in property at 1363 Hancock Street, owned by the Galvin Company to service a new building to be constructed on that corner.
All right. Public Works, refer to Public Works. Thank you. Is that all?
That's all communication.
All right, very well, thank you. Unfinished business from the preceding meeting?
I have none.
None. None. Okay. Reports of committees. Yes.
We're pending in finance, the MSBA item from the prior meeting.
Yes.
It was not properly advertised or a day off.
MSBA.
All right.
The first one is 2016003, Accelerated Repair Program for the Beechwood Nolan Marymount School, $6,752,145, replacing the roof, windows, and doors. Again, Beechwood Nolan and Marymount School, properly advertised, presentation given, ready to go.
All right. Is there a motion made by Council Crowe, seconded by Council Donna. On the motion?
Council?
Yes.
Council Kane?
Yes.
Council Crowe?
Yes.
Council DeBon?
Yes.
Council Finn?
Yes.
Council LaFarge?
Yes.
Council Yang?
Yes.
Council Calhoun?
Yes.
President Hughes?
Yes.
8 members, the others adopted. Is there one more? Or we will go-
For the rules.
Okay, they're all
Okay.
ready.
Very well, thank you. Any other unfinished business?
I have none.
All right, very well. Report. Where are you?
Report of committee.
Yes, reports of committees. Council Collins.
Yeah, on behalf of the Oversight Committee, I'd like to take Council Order 2016-46 out of committee and lay it on the table.
Okay.
So that it dies. Just goes away. We already addressed it tonight. That's a resolution relative to Chief Keenan coming before us and making a presentation.
Yes.
He's done that, therefore I want it out of my committee
To let it go.
to let it lie.
Very well, let it go. All right, very well. Reports of committees, Council of the Forest.
In the ordinance committee, we have two traffics, one in Ward 1, Council Order 2016-048, adding handicap parking at 110 Narragansett Road, and move positive recommendation.
All right, positive recommendation. All right.
Council King.
Name second.
Council Crowe. Council DeBon. Council Finn. Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Liang.
Yes.
Council Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members.
And in Ward 4, Council Order 2016-049, to add do not enter sign 4 to 6 p.m. at Rogers Street, intersecting with Willard, and move positive recommendation.
All right, motion made by Councilor Palmucci, seconded by Councilor Liang. On the motion.
049. Council Kane. Yes. Council Crowe. Council DeBon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Liang.
Yes.
Council Palmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes. Also, great. Any further reports of committees? Seeing none, petitions and presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Councilor Palmucci.
Thank you, Madam President. It is with a heavy heart that I take this opportunity to memorialize Bernice Mader of Quincy, who passed away on February 12th. Bernice was dedicated to her city and was passionate about being involved. She was active in politics. She worked as Mayor Sheets' executive assistant. She was a member of the Democratic State Committee. And she was also a founding member of the Citizens Against Airport Noise and a founder of the Red Tape Limited that helped women businesses get certified, just to name a few of the things that she was involved with. She was actually the original president of the Logan CAC, which is the Community Advisory Committee, which is the regional effort to lessen noise and pollution impacts for communities around Logan Airport. She served in that capacity for over 20 years on that committee. Bernice was an advocate for citizens and volunteered for many things in the city of Quincy. She also helped bring in many new restaurants to the area. She was driven, organized, and a highly motivated woman. She also loved to sing and was a member of the choir. She sang at veterans hospitals around the holiday and at local piano bars. She taught at North Quincy High School and put on many productions in the drama department. She was very involved with her family, keeping up on Facebook, keeping up on everyone's lives. She was a wonderful woman who will be greatly missed by all who knew her. So I ask that we dedicate the meeting tonight in closing to Bernice.
Thank you, Councilor Palmucci. Councilor Kane.
Thank you, Madam President. I have one acknowledgement to make and two memorials. The first acknowledgement is to recognize Parks Director Chris Cassani and Recreation Director Barry Welsh for making accommodations for what's called Quincy Code, which is the community's Office for Practical Encouragement. And this organization is run by Suzanne Ferrari, who's a Quincy resident, and is directly hand-delivering clothes and supplies to the homeless of the greater Boston area. I first want to applaud the efforts of Ms. Ferrari and thank Mr. Cassani and Mr. Welsh for accommodating Quincy Code by setting up a collection center within the Parks and Rec facility to the hundreds of area residents, which the hundreds of area residents have made contributions to this day. The memorials are both former residents and former residents of Ward 3. The first is Marie Prendel Maloney, who passed away after a battle with cancer on February 2nd. Marie was a Ward 3 resident and the sister to one of our colleagues, DPW Superintendent Larry Prendel. Marie was 59 years old. She was a dedicated nurse at the Carney Hospital for 37 years and was widely recognized as the cornerstone of her entire family. We've come to know the Maloney and Prendel families through multiple generations. They all actually live around the corner from me on Summit Avenue, and still the the rest of the Mullen family live on Forbes Hill Road. So I'd like to acknowledge the Mullen friendly families and pass our blessings their way. The second is Michelle Boyd DeJong, who was originally from Quincy, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 29 in Florida. Her parents, Bob and Denise Boyd, still live in Ward 3. They live on Mount Ararat Road. And Michelle unfortunately passed away on February 14th after a lengthy battle with brain cancer. As I said, she was 29 years old. So she brought inspiration and hope to thousands across the country with the awareness that she was able to bring to brain cancer that she was so unfortunately afflicted. One was through her book, which was called On March 14th, which was the day that she was diagnosed with brain cancer, and through her fighter mentality, which was a specific brand that she put forward and made well known. I'd also like to convey the council and the city's condolences to her family during this time. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Kate. Any further? Motions, orders, and resolutions. Yes, Councilor Calhoun.
On behalf of myself and Councilor Liang, I have an order that I'd like to introduce and ask that it be put on the agenda for next meeting. It is a reintroduction of an ordinance that I put into consideration last term relative to adding the words gender identity to Chapter 2.150 of the City of Quincy's anti-discrimination statute. So I ask that be entered as an order on behalf of Councilor Liang and I, and that it be placed on the agenda at the next meeting.
Okay, yes, the clerk is going to take out the number for this year. Thank you. And put his hands right on it. Thank you. Right where it is. Great. Anything further? Motions, orders, resolutions? Scheduling committee meetings and public hearings. Yes, Councilor Liang.
So I would like to schedule a meeting for the Downtown Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
For 6:30 p.m. for our next meeting on the 29th. Is that 7th?
March 7th.
All right, so Monday, March 7th at 6:30.
6:30 for
No, 6 p.m. Monday, March 7th.
All right. 6:30, March 7th.
That work for you guys?
Any other committees?
Yes.
All right. Yes.
The order tonight from the gas company, Connor Clive and Hancock, I think it's in Ward 5, Madam President.
Yes.
At some point, we have to put it on.
Put it on 7th?
We could put it on at 7:25 on the 7th, or we could put it off till the second meeting in March.
No, let's do it 7th at 7:25.
Because I have very few others. 7:25 on the 7th, we can get that.
Anything else?
Yeah, nothing else.
All right. All right. Seeing nothing else at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. Motion made, seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, all.